my Doomsday Train. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 26. It's a great plan. Time flies by quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was already dark. Chen Mang spent most of the day inside the train studying his beginner's guide, including the train's existing accessories. Since he had the unlimited upgrade add-on, his white-grade vehicle accessories were undoubtedly inferior to higher-grade ones. After all, his high-grade vehicle accessories could also be infinitely upgraded. He currently only possessed 2 high-grade vehicle accessories, both red, the level 2 earth core furnace and the level 1 wheel changer. Both accessories were auxiliary. The former was primarily used to consume abandoned trains and break them down into iron ore, while the latter allowed the vehicle to change wheels while in motion, adapting to varying driving conditions. However, while upgrading the earth core furnace from level 1 to level 2 required only 100 units of iron ore, upgrading from level 2 to level 3 required 10,000 units, with each upgrade allowing the vehicle to break down abandoned trains of the corresponding level. Upgrading the wheel changer to level 2 required a full 10,000 units of iron ore, with each upgrade adding an additional wheel slot. And according to the information in the beginner's guide, the higher the grade of vehicle components, the more resources each upgrade requires. Therefore, he planned a clear path for himself. In the early stages, when resources were limited, he prioritized upgrading white-grade vehicle components. He didn't need to upgrade too high, simply upgrading to a level with super modern effects, such as a level 5 wheel blade, would usher in the first qualitative change. This way, he could achieve the greatest improvement with minimal resources. He could then use the upgraded effects to plunder or mine more resources, continuously upgrading the train's level, thus reaching the required level for higher-grade vehicle components. Then, his train would truly undergo a qualitative transformation. The plan is great. Inside the train, Chen Mang sighed and rubbed his dry eyes. The plan was flawless, but the process was a bit arduous. After all, this wasn't a game. He had to give himself ample time to develop, and any unexpected events could disrupt his development plan. All he could do was avoid any unexpected situations and focus on developing while he could. And now, the last slave emerged from the mine. This time, they'd been mining for far longer than 10 hours, mostly around 12, with one individual digging for 14. This was far longer than he'd expected. He chuckled softly, then stood up and left the train compartment. He waved to Old Pig, who was guarding the train entrance. "Gather all the slaves." "Understood." Old Pig nodded respectfully, handing him the list he'd prepared. "Master Mang, here are the mining rankings for all the slaves today." Night fell. Chen Mang stood alone on the train's roof, facing the wind. A group of ragged slaves gathered below, their eyes filled with anticipation. Though there seemed to be a crowd, the vast wasteland still evoked a profound sense of loneliness. Thugs, armed with guns, stood around, keeping watch for any danger. No slave would escape in the wasteland. Gathering together offered a sense of security. If left alone, relying on their own strength, they would never escape the wasteland. That near-death experience would make one feel the essence of true despair. Humans, no matter where they are social animals. Even as slaves. Being a group of people together is better than being stranded alone in the wilderness. Chen Mang glanced at each person, feeling the cool night breeze. He glanced at the list in his hand for a moment before he couldn't help but laugh. Everyone performed very well today. The lowest number of people dug up was 11 iron ores. Excellent. What makes me most happy is that none of you gave up because you had no hope of competing for first place. Everyone worked very hard. A team's ceiling is often determined by its weaknesses. I hope everyone can maintain this mining speed and strive for even greater success. Everyone, get 2 extra slices of bread for your supper tonight. In addition, first place, Zhang Haoping, mined 20 iron ores today. Stand out. Let me see. The words fell. A middle-aged man with swarthy features stepped out of the crowd. Standing in the open space, he looked up at Chen Mang and whispered, somewhat innocently, "Master Mang, it's me." "Very good." Chen Mang looked the man up and down. He could vaguely see his legs trembling in the night, clearly exhausted from the day. He smiled and waved his hand. As we agreed, you choose one of these two women. The seemingly simple-minded man, without hesitation, pointed to one of the tall women and grinned excitedly. Master Mang, I want this one. She's tall, I like her. A low laugh erupted from the crowd, though no one dared to speak. Tonight is yours. Chen Mang waved his hand. The tall woman, standing in front of the slaves, immediately walked over to the simple-minded man with a cat-like gait. She bent down, nuzzled his forehead, and chuckled in her voice. Still strong, yes, yes, yes. The exhausted man straightened up almost instantly, his voice hoarse with anticipation. I have nothing on my body, but I have brute force. Chen Mang smiled at this and said nothing more, simply looking at the list in his hand and continuing. Second place, Li Kui, you mine 16 ores today, the remaining one is yours tonight, and, if everyone can maintain a minimum daily mining of 11 ores over the next 5 days, everyone will still be guaranteed 5 slices of bread a day even when there are no ores to mine. If everyone can maintain a minimum daily mining of 12 ores, we will add another carriage. As he finished speaking, the crowd roared with joy again. This was a benefit that would be personally realized by everyone. Each additional carriage meant more space. No more huddling together to sleep at night, and no more worrying about slaves stepping over you on their way to the toilet. After all this was done, as Chen Mang stepped off the train roof, Bai Ozi, standing nearby, immediately distributed today's dinner. Each slave received 2 extra slices of bread, while the top 3 received warm steamed buns and pickled mustard greens. Master Mang, Old Pig, waiting below, sighed with a hint of regret. It must be said, women are often a great way to boost your mood, but Master Mang, you're quite generous. A train conductor wouldn't normally share a woman of this appearance with his men. After all, cosmetics are hard to come by in the apocalypse, and there aren't many nice, clean clothes. Women with natural makeup and good figures like this are an absolute rarity in the apocalypse, very precious. Chapter 27, Erect a monument for Mr. Kun and burn some incense. Mang glanced at Old Pig without saying anything, simply patting his shoulder before returning to his train compartment. The iron ore had already been moved back to cargo warehouse number 2. A total of 1,101 units of iron ore with 81 slaves, producing that much iron ore in a single day was truly overcapacity. Money again. Inside the train compartment, Chen Mang couldn't help but chuckle at the resource count displayed on the panel. What's the use of women? If those 2 women could be sold for enough iron ore, he would have sold them long ago. Women, that thing. Too much of them is just so-so. Of the 7 vehicle components required for train upgrades, he only had 2 left to craft, the steel armor for the carriages and the axe production line. Both of these items required at least 1,100 units of iron ore, just enough. No more, no less. The axes produced by the axe production line were used to mine wood. This production line, the same size as the pickaxe production line, was also located in cargo car number 2. The steel armor for each carriage required 1,000 units of iron ore to construct. Naturally, he prioritized a locomotive. As the iron ore in carriage 2 melted in trash, Chen Mang stepped out of the train compartment and gazed at the thick armor covering the locomotive. He nodded with satisfaction. He tapped it tentatively with his knuckles, receiving a dull echo. Accessory name, carriage steel armor. Accessory grade, green. Accessory level, level 1. Accessory effect, completely immune to all damage from level 1 bullets and level 1 creatures, with some protection against level 2 bullets and creatures. Upgrade requirement. 5,000 units of iron ore, as expected, something requiring 1,000 units of iron ore to craft, worth the price. Not only does it look secure, but the panels also look tough. Chen Mang stood a few meters away, snatched up his Tamron assault rifle, and fired a burst of bullets at the locomotive's armor. Bang, bang, bang. After a volley of bullets was exhausted, Chen Mang approached to inspect it. The armor on the train's nose wasn't even dented, only a hint of paint chipping, absolutely impervious. His Tamron assault rifle production line was level 1, so the rifles it produced were naturally level 1 rifles and ammunition. He even fired half a volley at the windshield on the train's nose. Still, not a single mark. Although the armor wasn't visible through the glass, it shared the armor's strength. If the steel armor on the exterior of all the train cars were level 2 or even level 3, then even if another zombie horde arrived, the train wouldn't be able to penetrate even if it stood still. Very good, Chen Mang nodded with satisfaction. Those 1,000 units of iron ore were well spent, though they went through it too quickly. His 81 slaves toiled all day, and he'd spent it all in a flash. Only 1 unit of iron ore remained. Earning money was like squeezing toothpaste, while spending money was like water. He suddenly felt somewhat fortunate that Master Kun had kidnapped him and made him his slave right after crossing over. Otherwise, if he hadn't had those 81 slaves at the start, life would have been difficult, and he would have had to mine the ore himself. Master Kun was a good man. When he had the chance, he would erect a monument to him and burn some incense. So far, he had crafted all 7 necessary vehicle parts for the level 1 train upgrade, leaving him with only 1 step to upgrade to level 2. Upgrade requirements. 4 carriages, crafted all 7 required vehicle parts, and consuming 5,000 units of level 1 iron ore, he now had 3 carriages. Adding another slave carriage and accumulating 5,000 units of iron ore would be enough to upgrade to level 2. Barring any unexpected events, it would only take 5 days. Everything was moving in a positive direction. But it also served as a reminder. Once the train reaches level 2, we must prioritize upgrading the Tamron assault rifle production line to level 2. This way, future Tamron assault rifles will be able to penetrate the level 1 armor of other trains without difficulty. We must focus on both defense and offense. Tonight is destined to be an unforgettable night. The slave car is stinking. The 2 grooms who won the one-night stand today refuse to bring the women back to the slave car, instead engaging in sexual activity right there. The other slaves gather around and boo, creating a lively scene. Some even take advantage of the chaos to push each other's butts. Biozi and his thugs stood nearby, watching the scene. After a long pause, Biozi couldn't help but laugh, somewhat affected by the atmosphere. It's so lively. I never had this kind of scene before under Master Kun, that, Haiwa, standing nearby, murmured with some regret. I suddenly regret being chosen as a thug. I'm quite strong, too. If I were a slave, I'd definitely be the one taking up arms tonight. Biozi rolled his eyes at Haiwa with disdain. Look at you, you're nothing. We're thugs, a level higher than slaves. If Master Mang can feed slaves this kind of food, then shouldn't we have something better? Haiwa scratched his head awkwardly and muttered, it's not about whether the food is good or not, it's mainly about the lively atmosphere. It's been ages since the apocalypse. I want to go in and have some fun. Biozi was slightly taken aback, then he too gazed at the scene not far away, a bit dazed. It really hadn't been this lively since the apocalypse. In the high-risk environment of the apocalypse, everyone's nerves were on edge, and nearly every train conductor had some unacceptable quirks. When someone spends a long time in a high-risk environment, suddenly rises to power, and is unconstrained by legal and moral constraints, they're bound to resort to extreme behavior to relieve stress. This is an objective law. But Mang Yi seemed to have no quirks at all, completely normal mentally, no mood swings, no womanizing, etc. It sounded as if Mang Yi had a bigger problem. In the blink of an eye, the 5th day had arrived. The sky was just beginning to turn pale. Chen Mang had risen early and washed. Standing inside the train, he clasped his hands, closed his eyes, and muttered, God bless me, one more peaceful day, even if today is my last. The first 4 days had passed without incident, with all slaves mining a minimum of 12 pieces daily. It was practically over capacity. As long as today's mining was successfully completed, his train would be automatically upgraded to a Class 2 train, a significant improvement. There was nothing else to say. With the train radio and the energy stones produced by the crafting station, he could now confidently explore the wasteland at full speed, searching for higher-level iron ore and opportunities. He'd been feeling a wave of anxiety these past few days. After all, Kun had only been mining for a few hours when the zombie horde arrived. It was easy to imagine how rapidly the wasteland could change. He was already quite satisfied with 4 days of successful mining. Of course, if he could mine successfully for another day today, he'd be even more satisfied. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28. I'll burn some incense for you tomorrow. Train. Chen Mang stood at the control panel, his binoculars in hand, peering into the distance. There was no movement, a truly serene silence. He'd grown accustomed to this state of mind during his days in the wasteland. It felt a little strange, though. After all, back in Master Kun's slave car, he'd seen the thugs remain vigilant throughout the entire trip, even while the train was stationed. Even though there weren't massive monsters like the zombie horde, there were still scattered sightings. He hadn't seen a single monster in those 4 days. It was utterly silent. The glass observation windows at the front of the train had a 180-degree angle, allowing him to see only what was happening ahead and to the sides. Chen Mang stood at the control panel again, opened the skylight at the top of the train, and peered back. Still, there was no movement. After this, he breathed a sigh of relief, hoping for a peaceful day. Then he glanced at the resource count on the train panel: 4,819 units of iron ore. This was all he had accumulated over the past 4 days. After today, he could upgrade to level 2 train. Everything was proceeding smoothly. Meanwhile, a commotion was already rising outside the train. The slaves had all awoke, taking the pickaxes from the thugs and heading for the mines. Over the past few days, Old Pig had already arranged the basic procedures, so he no longer needed to be involved in such matters. All the slaves had gone down to the mines. Chen Mang also began his breakfast. Old Pig had already brought him steamed buns and pickled mustard greens, the best food on the train. Ah, he sighed softly, looking at the pickled mustard greens in his hands. While the pickled mustard greens tasted good with the steamed buns, it wasn't something he could eat every day. He'd wanted a change of pace, but then again, he still had no idea where the pickled mustard greens were obtained. Was it a production line after the train was upgraded to level 2, or was it gathered from the ruins of the city? A large amount of pickled mustard greens had been seized from Master Kun's train, and there were still over 80 bags left. By the time this batch was gone, there wouldn't be any left to go with it. It would be nice to have some laugan ma or some meat sauce, and even better, a cigarette. I haven't smoked in so many days, and I'm feeling a bit itchy. Chen Mang chewed on the steamed bun in his hand, his mind wandering in a trance. Time slipped away slowly. Captain Pig, outside the train, Bai Ozi found Lao Zu, licked his lips, and tentatively asked, "I heard you used to be a deputy conductor, what's wrong?" Lao Zu looked up at Bai Ozi, then continued standing in the wasteland, writing in his small notebook. "Nothing," Bai Ozi scratched his head. He had specifically told Haiwa not to tell anyone that he had been a train conductor. Lao Zu's past as a deputy conductor was a plus, but his past as a conductor was a minus. Although he had accepted his fate, being a train conductor wasn't something you could just get by on a train order. But Mang couldn't help but believe it. Just like in a peaceful society, a former boss forced to work as a laborer would undoubtedly fill a significant gap, naturally fostering many inappropriate thoughts. If Mang Yi thought he still wanted to be a train conductor, his life on the Star Train would certainly be uncomfortable, like sleeping on separate beds for his head and stomach. "I just have something to report to you, Captain Pig," Bai Ozi chuckled and whispered. "Well, Taiping City, the nearest ruined city, has been searched many times recently, but I know of a tobacco shop on the outskirts of Taiping City. That tobacco shop used to sell cigarettes frequently. There's a secret compartment in the shop filled with cigarettes that's definitely unsearched. I think Mang Yi seems to be craving cigarettes these days. How about we go to Taiping City?" Old Pig hesitated for a moment. Bai Ozi's telling him this was clearly a way to curry his favor. If he could report this to Mang Yi and successfully obtain dozens of cigarettes, he would definitely be rewarded. The train is still at level 1. We'll see after it's upgraded to level 2. The most important task right now is to get it there, but I've made a note of this. When we find it, I'll tell Master Mang you provided this place. Bai Ozi chuckled and scratched the back of his head. "Okay, then, Captain Pig, I won't bother you anymore. I'll continue my patrol," but he secretly grumbled. Although Captain Pig always acted harmless and lapdog in front of Master Mang, he had survived this long in the apocalypse, even serving as assistant conductor. He couldn't be a simple person. If he didn't curry favor with him, he might be in trouble in the future. Being a conductor might just require a bit of luck, but being an assistant conductor really depends on skill and ability. Of course, becoming a conductor requires a bit of luck, but becoming a qualified conductor is incredibly difficult. Apart from anything else, just like him, having survived the apocalypse until now, to be honest, he also considered himself no ordinary person. A year ago, the apocalypse arrived. After the sudden collapse of order, two groups of people gradually emerged. One group was the train conductors in the wasteland, and the other was the survivors in the city. These survivors, either lone wolves or in gangs, found safe havens within the city, such as large infrastructure like air raid shelters. They spent their days scavenging supplies like hamsters, managing to eke out a meager existence. Of course, when these people were captured aboard the train, their status changed. Survivors became slaves. After the apocalypse, all firearms were rendered ineffective, leaving these people with little resistance against monsters and essentially resorting to hiding. Level 1 monsters were the most basic, like Level 1 zombies. And only Level 1 monsters could be killed with standard means, like fire axes. Level 2 and 3 monsters required only train parts or weapons crafted on the train assembly line to effectively harm them. To put it bluntly, there were only two types of people in this world, conductors or slaves. In the blink of an eye. As darkness fell, the slaves gradually returned from the mines, like diligent ants returning to their nests. Excellent. Inside the train, Chen Mang sat at the control console, looking at the resource counts on the train panel and smiling with satisfaction. After this batch of iron ore was piled up in cargo warehouse number 2, the number of iron ore finally reached 6,012 units. Oh, God! Chen Mang clasped his hands together, raised his head slightly, took a deep breath, and muttered to suppress his excitement, "Your Excellency truly listens to my prayers. Today has truly passed without incident again. In that case, could you please bless me with safe mining here for the next 7 days? You're the best. I'll burn some incense for you tomorrow." Chapter 29. Your train is upgraded to level 2. After thanking the heavens, Chen Mang opened his eyes and glanced at the pitch-black night outside. He couldn't hold back his smile, grinning and nodding repeatedly. Finally, enough iron ore the train could finally be upgraded to level 2. All his requirements were met, leaving only the construction of a new carriage. He had already promised the slaves that if they could maintain a daily mining output of at least 12 pieces for the next 5 days, he would build them a slave carriage, giving them more spacious living quarters. A thought struck him. The 100 units of iron ore in cargo car number 2 instantly turned to dust and melted into the car. Then, suddenly, a carriage, composed of several white dotted lines, appeared behind the star train on the wasteland. A few seconds later, as the faintly glowing white lines gradually dimmed, a brand new carriage appeared at the rear of the star train, towed along. Thus, the train had its fourth carriage, slave car number 5. Now that all the conditions for upgrading the train had been met, Chen Mang's mind shifted again, and a full 5,000 units of iron ore turned into powder and merged into the train cars. This was the necessary resource for the upgrade. Once all the powder had been absorbed by the train, a translucent panel suddenly popped up in front of Chen Mang. Your train has been upgraded to level 2. This will unlock more craftable components, as well as more customization and practical features. Chen Mang eagerly skipped over the prompt and opened his train dashboard. Soon, a highly detailed panel appeared on the screen inside the train. Train name, star. Train level, level 2. Train components, level 2 core furnace, level 1 wheel changer, level 5 turning blade. Number of carriages, 4. Ore units, 913 iron ore, 100 wood, 10 copper ore. Upgrade requirements, 10 carriages, all 6 required vehicle components crafted, 5,000 level 2 iron ore consumed, and the combined level of all components within the train must be above level 40. Finally reached level 2, Chen Mang quickly glanced at the 12 craftable vehicle accessories that appeared after the train reached level 2. 6 of them were mandatory, while the remaining 6 were optional if the train was to be upgraded to level 3. He immediately spotted the train radio and crafting station he desired most. Then he glanced at the new button that appeared on the control panel after the train upgrade. Personalization. Pressing it immediately brought up a multitude of customization options, nearly 10 in total. For example, customizing the interior of the train compartments, creating a hard seat or even sleeper compartment like Mr. Kun's, perfect for the thug's daily routines. Or changing the exterior color of the compartments. Even having the train name printed on them. However, Chen Mang curled his lips. Each option cost resources, and there weren't many useful customization options. At least, he didn't think anyone would waste resources on changing the exterior color of the train. Just as he was about to take a closer look at the 12 craftable accessories that had appeared after the train upgrade, whoo, a shrill, muffled train whistle suddenly blared from afar. Chen Mang, still at the control panel, researching the upgrade's effects, leaped to his feet almost instantly, quickly grabbing a pair of binoculars and peering towards the source. He saw a dusty, pitch-black train barreling towards him through the night. It was afloat. The whistle had been blaring for several seconds, showing no sign of stopping. As the train approached, the blast grew louder and louder. Almost subconsciously, Chen Mang grabbed the intercom and spoke rapidly and hoarsely, "All slaves, return to the train cars as quickly as possible." The rest of the thugs, prepare for battle. He had no idea what was happening. But he knew one thing: in the wilderness, most emergencies were unlikely to be good. At the same time, the urgent voices of Biozi and the others echoed over the intercom. "Master Mang, everyone is in position, ready to fight. Wait for orders." He didn't know what the train was like, but he wasn't about to give the mine away so easily. He had to at least give it a try. If he couldn't get the upper hand, then he couldn't even think of escaping. After all, finding another iron ore mine was no easy task. The train in the telescope was moving at a rapid pace, even faster than his own train, and showed no sign of slowing down. It blared its whistle as it sped past him, quickly disappearing from view. As they passed, he noticed that the other train had only 3 carriages, and the exteriors were riddled with dents and blood, with pieces of flesh and body parts hanging from the carriages, fluttering in the wind. It was clear that all 3 carriages were armored, otherwise they would be more than just dents. Then, 3 more piercing whistles blared from afar. As the sound gradually became clearer, Chen Mang could clearly see 3 more trains, still in the same direction, speeding towards him, almost shoulder to shoulder, blaring their horns. He even recognized one of them. It was the Class 2 train that had sped past him a few nights before after being attacked by zombie wolves. He had been envious. That train had 13 carriages, not only armored but also equipped with 2 heavy machine guns on the roof. The front of the train even had 2 large caliber cannons. That night, with its high beams on and a DJ playing at full volume, it rushed past him with a reckless and arrogant attitude, even blasting its whistle 3 times as it passed. From then on, that train became his target. He secretly vowed that sooner or later, he would own a train with similar features and roar across the wasteland with such arrogance. However, this very train of his dreams was now fleeing towards him from afar, in a rather disastrous state. Of its original 13 carriages, only 8 remained, the trains considerably shorter, and the exteriors were riddled with holes, as if corroded by acid. A green, sticky liquid hung from the exteriors. The DJ had stopped playing and began blasting the whistle. The hoarse, piercing blast filled the once silent wasteland with a bleak, despairing atmosphere. Something's happened. Upon seeing this, Chen Mang's face grimly shifted as he instantly realized what was happening. Whether it was the first train or the 3 following it, they were clearly fleeing for their lives. There was no doubt some terrifying entity, like a horde of zombies, was pursuing them. Although he couldn't see anything, perhaps due to the lack of visibility in the darkness, he immediately stepped on the accelerator and steered the train to full speed, aiming in the direction of the train he had initially passed, and sped off. Even the nearly fully loaded Level 2 train had already run away, so why would his newly upgraded Level 2 train not run? Damn it! Seeing that his train was clearly slower than the others, and soon those trains had overtaken him, leaving him with no trace, and his train now the only one left in the wasteland, Chen Mang couldn't help but curse. Is God a dog? He loses his composure the moment I praise him, or is it because he's off duty tonight and won't answer prayers? Chapter 30. No matter how raging the world is, you will just grow up safely, right? There are 4 factors that affect the speed of a train. 1. External acceleration accessories. 2. Different types of wheels. 3. The weight of the train. 4. The level of the train. The wheels currently used by the Star Train are Level 1 Hot Wheels. The advantage of this type of wheel is that it can maintain the fastest speed of the same level in the wilderness, adding 30 km per hour to the maximum speed. The original upper limit of the train's basic speed was 100 km per hour. After upgrading to Level 2 train, the basic upper limit speed became 130 km per hour. Due to the Hot Wheels and its own weight 156 km/h, Chen Mang looked at the maximum speed on the control panel screen, took a deep breath, and quickly calmed down. Countless permutations and combinations began to flash through his mind. Now there are only 2 ways to increase the speed. He definitely doesn't have external acceleration accessories, so there are only 2 ways to go: upgrading the Hot Wheels or disconnecting all the carriages. But, upgrading the Hot Wheels from level 1 to level 2 actually requires a damn 1000 units of iron ore, and he only has 913 units right now, which isn't enough. He could throw all those guns and other items into the Earth's core furnace, which should be enough to get the remaining 87 units. Climbing through the skylight to the front of the train and throwing the guns into the furnace is risky, but feasible. If the unknown entity behind is really chasing him, this is the only way. But, Chen Mang looked at the deserted night in the rearview mirror of the train. This speed should be enough. No monster can run at that speed on its own 2 feet. Even a zombie couldn't run at that speed. Master Lu, inside the train, which still had 8 cars left, a burly man with a guanyin bodhisattva tattoo shook his head. He looked up at a dwarf man at the controls and whispered, "That train doesn't have a radio, so we can't contact them." Sigh, the dwarf at the controls sighed softly and shook his head with regret. What a pity. If the people on this train had abandoned the train and fled into the mines, they might have escaped. They panicked when they saw us fleeing and followed us. That guy will soon outrun his train. He's a real jerk. Taiping City has been going crazy these past few days. Could this guy have been mining here all day? He's really brave. He remembered this train. A few days ago, when he'd enthusiastically arrived in Taiping City, this train had been mining here. The fighting had been going on there for days, and when he'd escaped, he'd discovered that this train was still mining. Awesome. Let the world rage, and you thrive peacefully, right? Looks like the harvest's been good. The front of the train is even armored. He'd come a long way since childhood, so he could understand this train conductor he'd never met. It was just a little regretful. After days of mining, he'd ended up in hell. He wished there were mines there, too. If there were, they'd surely be rare ores, perhaps even a hell train. At high speed, he quickly lost sight of the train. He could only play with the Buddhist beads on his wrist, close his eyes, and smack his lips. I'm such a kind-hearted person, I'm sure I'll go to heaven after death. Then I'll build a heaven train. The man-eating spider in the back was a level 3. The heavy machine guns and cannons in their train were all level 2, completely powerless against the enemy's defenses. They might be good enough to bully the young, but they were completely useless against the boss. When the monster's level surpassed the level of the offensive vehicle accessories, the offensive vehicle accessories wouldn't deal damage. The damage would simply be ignored, barely even a scratch. Even a red-grade vehicle accessory, such as a level 2 anti-tank cannon, is ineffective against a level 3 zombie. The power of an offensive vehicle accessory is determined by its grade and level. However, its ability to penetrate defenses is solely determined by its level. Upgrading an offensive vehicle accessory not only increases its power but also allows it to effectively damage higher-level monsters. Of course, this does not apply to level 1 monsters. Level 1 monsters are the most basic, capable of being damaged even by ordinary weapons like fire axes. After the apocalypse, all firearms are rendered ineffective. To possess firearms capable of inflicting sufficient damage on monsters, one must use those crafted on the train's production line. Therefore, trains are the sole theme of this world. Initially, several trains had been provoking each other from the edge. When a level 3 man-eating spider reached one end, the trains on the other side took the opportunity to kill the boss's young, thereby obtaining the rare resources and accessory blueprints that might drop from the young spider. But who knew, after killing so many of its young, the spider went completely berserk, disregarding its own young in the city and pursuing the trains like crazy. They had no choice but to flee, no time for temper. They initially fled in different directions, but then the boss unleashed its silk, blocking all other routes. They were forced into a single direction. Once they reached the wasteland, they no longer needed to turn, simply pushing the horsepower to the limit, which was a bit faster. What a shame, the dwarf man at the controls said, looking regretfully at the sandy wasteland behind them. The rare resources they'd gained from killing the young spiders these past few days were quite good, more than enough to offset their losses. If they could also slay the boss spider, the rare resources would surely be even more abundant. However, only offensive vehicle accessories of level 3 or higher could damage the spider. Upgrading both the green-grade heavy machine gun and the blue-grade cannon to level 3 required a considerable amount of iron ore. He hadn't prioritized upgrading them. After all, level 3 monsters were mostly unheard of in this wasteland. There was, however, a production line for level 3 Tamron assault rifles. But the caliber of a level 3 rifle was barely enough to tickle the man-eating spider. It could penetrate its defense, but it was useless. Upgrading white-grade defensive vehicle parts didn't cost much, but they couldn't reach level 3. So, they had no choice but to flee. Meanwhile, in the Star Train, Chen Mang, sitting at the control console, suddenly felt the ground vibrate. He instinctively glanced in the rearview mirror, and his breath nearly stopped. In the distance, a spider, over 10 meters tall, was hurtling toward him at breakneck speed. At first glance, it resembled a swiftly advancing mountain. Chen Mang's face paled as he took a deep breath. He felt as if all the blood in his body had been concentrated in the back of his head, and his adrenaline began to surge rapidly. For the first time, he discovered that he seemed to have a fear of giants. He wasn't particularly afraid of spiders, but seeing such a large spider for the first time was a bit too much for him. Chapter 31. The Star Train was already moving at full speed. But the distance between them was rapidly closing, and the speed disparity was quite large. In this situation, even if he upgraded his Hot Wheels to level 2 and then used the tail-braking survival technique to remove all the cars, he would still have difficulty escaping. Unless the cars he abandoned attracted the enemy's attention, he could escape. But this was unlikely. After all, the trains that had escaped before him had lost several cars and were still being pursued. Perhaps because his train was the only one visible in the entire wasteland, the giant spider locked onto his Star Train, its 8 massive legs sprinting across the wasteland, determined not to give up. "You're crazy." Inside the train, Chen Mang looked into the rearview mirror at the giant spider that was rapidly approaching like a hill. He couldn't help but curse. A spider can run so fucking fast, how the hell is that reasonable? Does having more legs mean it can run faster? Then my train has so many wheels, how can it not run as fast as him? Master Mang, the old pig sitting next to him tightly gripped the handrail inside the train, his voice trembling with despair. This is a level 3 boss monster among the level 2 man-eating spider monsters. After mutating into a boss monster, its size will increase significantly, making it a boss. Ordinary level 1 or 2 offensive vehicle accessories can't penetrate its defense at all. You must have level 3 or higher offensive vehicle accessories to cause effective damage to this boss monster. Generally speaking, a level 3 man-eating spider boss monster won't have such speed. It will only burst out at such speed when it is extremely angry, and it will be weak for a long time after such a burst. Even if it cuts off its tail to survive, our train head can't outrun it. The train head's level 1 armor can't withstand its attack. I might be dead, huh? Chen Mang, sitting at the control console, was slightly startled by Lao Zhu's words, and subconsciously glanced at the rapidly approaching giant spider in the rearview mirror. Did he mean that any offensive vehicle of level 3 or higher could effectively damage this monster? But his wheel blade was level 5. He had originally thought that this white vehicle accessory would need to be upgraded to dozens of levels before it could truly transform. He hadn't expected this world's hierarchy to be so rigid that a mere level 3 offensive vehicle accessory could effectively inflict sufficient damage on this boss. In that case, Chen Mang narrowed his eyes slightly. He knew he couldn't outrun it anyway, so he might as well give it a try. The spider's abdomen was almost flat against the ground, with 8 legs scurrying wildly on either side. If he could sever all of them, the rest would be much easier. The next moment, the wheel blades activated. 2 70-centimeter wide blades, flashing with a cold light, rapidly extended from the sides of the Star Train carriage. Then, under Chen Mang's control, the Star Train turned with the widest arc in the direction it had come from. In mere seconds, the train had completed its U-turn. However, due to the lack of universal wheels, the arc was too large, resulting in a long detour, which delayed them considerably. By the time the U-turn was complete, the mountain-like man-eating spider was only a few hundred meters away. Master Mang, before Lao Zhu could react, he saw the scene from the train's observation room. His heart instantly leaped to his throat, and he shouted in a trembling voice, "There's no way our train can hide it." "Don't panic." Chen Mang, by this point, had completely calmed down. He sat at the controls, his brainwaves completely attuned to the train. His breathing gradually became steady as he gripped the control lever, preparing to make fine adjustments, his eyes fixed on the man-eating spider so close. Everything around him seemed to slow down. Hundreds of meters away, with both vehicles moving at full speed, it arrived in the blink of an eye. In an instant, the two trains were only a few meters apart. Just as they were about to collide, Chen Mang, gripping the control panel tightly with both hands, veered slightly to the left. The entire train, like a long snake, passed over the spider's massive head, heading straight for its right leg. As it passed, the rapidly rotating steel blades on both sides of the train, fueled by inertia, easily severed all four legs of the spider's right side like a guillotine. Admittedly, because the blades were a meter above the ground, they didn't completely sever all four legs, but a severed leg was clearly less effective. As the train turned back to face the man-eating spider again, Chen Mang, standing inside the train, observed the scene and smiled. The man-eating spider, the size of a small mountain, had lost its balance and tumbled heavily onto the wasteland. It was now struggling to get back to its feet, emitting bursts of piercing roars. This was the first time he had seen a spider with vocal organs. Now, if he could sever the remaining four legs, the spider would be trapped in the wasteland, struggling to maintain its previous speed. A few more times, removing all the shortened legs, would completely disable the spider. The spider's four legs weren't aligned, so to sever them all at once with a blade, he needed to use a joystick to assist with micromanipulation, requiring the entire train to swerve forward like a snake. This was a difficult maneuver. A single mistake could result in a derailment. This was Chen Mang's first attempt at this challenging control technique, and the results seemed quite good. He had been practicing train control in his free time these past few days. Old Pig took in the scene before him. Though he quickly realized what was happening, he still muttered in bewilderment, "What's going on?" However, Chen Mang didn't answer. Instead, a glint of greed flickered in his eyes. If he could kill this boss, he'd surely drop a ton of goodies. Narrowing his eyes slightly, he immediately prepared to attack with all his might. Despite his greed, he remained vigilant. He remembered the armor of the fleeing trains, coated in a sticky green liquid, as if corroded. This boss clearly had more than just its legs. Furthermore, he'd caught the spider off guard, unable to react, which had led to his victory. By now, the spider had fully reacted. Its 8 legs, thrashed in pain, hammered at the wasteland ground, each strike carving a massive crater. While he was capable of penetrating defenses, his defense was completely worthless against this spider. It was a classic example of high attack and low defense. If he drove the train through at this point, his train would be riddled with holes. But he had a better solution. Chen Mang stopped the train on the wasteland, disconnected the locomotive from the 4 rear carriages. Then disconnected the 4th carriage from the 3rd, and finally connected the 4th carriage to the locomotive. Thus, a compact train was assembled. A cigarette would be helpful right now. Inside the train, Chen Mang licked his lips, trying to calm his breathing as much as possible before flooring the accelerator. The next moment, the entire train, like a wild horse, hurtled towards the giant spider struggling in the wasteland, aiming for the 4 intact legs. Just as it was about to collide, Chen Mang severed the connection with the carriages and simultaneously swerved the locomotive to the left, away from the boss. Driven by inertia, the carriage hurtled straight towards the 4 legs that continuously hammered the ground. Sizzle. Sizzle, along with several sizzling sounds and the boss's roar, the 2 originally intact legs on the boss's left side had been cut off by the high-speed rotating blade. As for the carriage, it was pierced by the other 2 legs and held high in the air and waved continuously, and finally thrown heavily to the ground in the distance. The plan was successful. Chen Mang, who was in the front of the train, looked at the scene in the rearview mirror and grinned. He really should have a victory cigar at this time. One carriage only needs 100 units of iron ore. As long as this is repeated a few more times, this boss will be buried here. As long as the mind does not slip, there are always more ways than difficulties. After witnessing the scene from the beginning, the old pig in the train room subconsciously opened his mouth again with a face full of shock and confusion. Chapter 32. It's time to eat. After repeating the same trick several times, Chen Mang's control became increasingly smooth. As several carriages were destroyed, the mountain-sized spider's legs were severed by the roots. Its entire body collapsed onto the wasteland, completely unable to move, like a lamb to be slaughtered. Finally, dinner can begin. Inside the train, Chen Mang breathed a sigh of relief and reconnected the abandoned carriages to the locomotive. He then steered the train closer to the giant spider, circling behind it. The spider sprayed silk from its abdomen, and its mouth looked quite aggressive. It was safest to attack from its rear end. However, his wheel blade was only 70 centimeters wide, while the spider was over 10 meters tall, the height of a 4-story building. Even though it was now immobilized and nearly deprived of all offensive means, it would be difficult to kill it. Even if the car body pressed right against the spider's rear end, it would only leave a 70-centimeter deep wound, not fatal for a spider of its size. But it didn't matter. Chen Mang glanced around, finally understanding why the wasteland had been so quiet the past few days. It must be because this creature's aura had scared away all the nearby monsters. For the time being, no one or any monsters would pass by, giving him plenty of time to slowly polish his skills. Swish, with a sharp, tearing sound, Chen Mang steered the train, repeatedly passing behind the spider's rear end. However, no matter how many times it passed, it only left a single 70-centimeter deep wound in the same spot, completely incapable of fatality. Half an hour later, Chen Mang walked out of the train compartment with an expressionless face, standing on the wasteland and gazing at the mountain-like Spider King. The spider had completely lost its ability to move, and had virtually no means of attack. Yet, even with such a white-faced boss right there, he was completely powerless to deal with it, unable to kill it. Its powerful, painful roars suggested it was still a long way from dying. Yes, that's right. A level 5 wheel blade could penetrate defenses, thanks to its level suppression, but it was only a white-grade vehicle accessory, so its power was limited. The blade was only 70 centimeters wide. Even if it were upgraded a few levels, to a full meter, it would be useless. It still couldn't kill the spider. What should we do? Old Pig, standing nearby, watched the scene, feeling somewhat helpless. This was completely beyond his comprehension. According to his understanding, a level 2 train would have no choice but to flee when faced with a level 3 boss spider like this. Achieving this level of success was already quite impressive. But now, there was a clear chance of a kill. This boss would surely drop valuable loot. However, even if the boss gave up, they had no way of killing it. Alice, Chen Mang sighed softly, rubbing his temple as he pondered without saying a word. A level 5 machine gun would have been much better at this point. He didn't believe the spider could withstand a 10-minute barrage. Leaving at this point would have been a real shame. Master Mang, just then, Biozi raised an idea, hesitantly saying, "Can we remove the blade? That would make it much easier to use." No, Chen Mang shook his head, dismissing the suggestion. The blade's high speed was powered by the energy stone in the locomotive. Disconnecting it would also deplete its energy supply. And its high speed would soon cease. Furthermore, while the blade's main body was in the locomotive, meaning each constructed carriage would have its own blade, it couldn't be removed. Forcibly removing it would shatter into countless fragments, completely destroying the whole. Wait, a solution suddenly struck him, and his frown immediately relaxed. He strode to the train room, constructed another carriage, and after disconnecting it, he beckoned all the slaves down. Working together, nearly 100 people quickly forcibly removed the blades from both sides of the carriage. The removed blades instantly shattered into countless shimmering, cold fragments. That's it. He spent only 100 units of iron ore and obtained nearly 100 steel fragments capable of breaking through the defenses of a level 3 boss man-eating spider. While they were small and insignificant next to the 4-story tall spider, they were outnumbered. Old Pig and Biozi instantly understood Chen Mang's intentions. After distributing each steel fragment among the slaves, at Chen Mang's command, all the slaves, armed with fragments, rushed towards the man-eating spider's butt and began to chip away at it. Yes. Chisel. The scene looked like mining. After all, nearly 100 slaves were far too cramped for the man-eating spider. The thugs didn't rest either, including Biozi and Old Pig, who rolled up their sleeves and joined in. An hour later, Chen Mang, sitting on the roof of the train, looked at the mighty scene not far away and sighed helplessly. This boss is so damn hard to kill. They had been chipping away for an hour, and the results were not bad. They had already chipped a large hole in the man-eating spider's butt. The ground was covered in sticky blood and shredded flesh. Everyone's clothes were now stained red with blood. A stench filled the air, enveloping the wasteland. An unknown amount of time passed. Daybreak had already arrived. Chen Mang, his eyelids trembling on the train roof, finally regained consciousness when the lingering roar in his ears gradually faded and faded. The man-eating spider, its body hollowed out, finally collapsed completely onto the wasteland. As it collapsed, several points of light shot out from its back, landing on the clean wasteland nearby. That wasn't easy. Chen Mang leaped from the train roof. He didn't immediately head for the dropped items. Instead, he tilted his head to look at Old Pig, Biozi and the others. Go find a few people to collect some blood in buckets and pour it into the purified water filter. Get some water out for everyone to wash with. Thank you so much, Master Mang. Biozi's voice trembled slightly. He straightened his completely aching back and struggled to stretch his neck. It was damn exhausting, but the result was still good. Of course, the slaves were the most exhausted. They'd mined all day and worked all night. After the announcement, many slaves even fell asleep, too tired to climb back into the train car. While the process was difficult, the result was good. Most importantly, no one bothered them that night, otherwise, they would have been forced to abandon this lucrative piece of meat and run away. It's time for dinner. Chen Mang's eyes gleamed with anticipation as he strode towards the few bright spots of light in the nearby wasteland. These items should be the boss's drops this time. He hoped to earn back the money he paid for the resources. He built 6 scrapped carriages alone, which consumed 600 units of iron ore. Chapter 33. Get in the car and go to Taiping City. Do you know the way? This level 3 boss monster, the man-eating spider, dropped 4 items upon its death. 1, 2 units of the level 3 ore red heart rock. 2, 100 units of the level 2 material find spider silk. 3. The powerful magnet, a green-grade vehicle accessory blueprint. 4. The hell staff, a special item. These 4 items comprise the entire loot dropped by this boss. The first 2 are rare ores, resources not found in mines but only dropped after defeating the boss. They are often used to craft and upgrade special vehicle accessories, but he currently has no use for them. The powerful magnet, a vehicle accessory, attracts all items dropped by monsters killed by the train or its crew members within a certain radius into a designated carriage. This accessory's primary use isn't in this situation, but during a zombie tidal wave. In such an environment, stopping to retrieve dropped items is impossible, but with this item, you can easily retrieve dropped items from the swarm. The 4th item is a special item. It wasn't meant for the train, but for a single person. It took the shape of a staff. Holding this special item, anyone within a certain radius of the train, even outside the locomotive, could remotely control it. For example, if he had this thing last night, he wouldn't have needed to return to the locomotive to build a carriage. He wouldn't have needed to operate any automated firepower weapons from the locomotive itself. He could simply stand near the train and control them remotely with a staff. Not bad. It was a good thing, but the name, the Hell Staff, wasn't exactly flattering. Very good, Chen Mang nodded with satisfaction. It was a boss they'd spent the entire night killing. The reward was quite generous. While the rare ore dropped wasn't immediately useful, it could always be used later. Half an hour later, everyone had finished washing. The spider's blood was plentiful enough to dye the wasteland red. After using the purified water filter, there was no shortage of water. Such a luxurious bath in purified water was something many slaves hadn't enjoyed in ages. Return, Chen Mang beamed at the slaves, preparing to return to the iron mine where he'd started. After a day of rest, he'd resume mining. His current Class 2 train was just a shell. He hadn't yet crafted many of the necessary components. While he'd been given a good supply of rare ores, what he lacked most was common iron ore. He still had to keep mining. Mr. Mang, at this time, Old Pig came trotting over and suggested tentatively, I think the reason why we haven't seen even a single monster in the past few days is most likely because this level 3 man-eating spider gave birth to its pups in the nearby Taiping City, and its scent scared away the other monsters. Taiping City may be the most empty right now. How about looting it? Biozi told me that there is a secret compartment in a tobacco shop on the outskirts of Taiping City, and it must have never been looted. No. Chen Mang shook his head and looked at Old Pig indifferently. What's more important now is to get enough iron ore to build some basic accessories for the level 2 train, such as enough heavy machine guns. If we had as many heavy machine guns as the train with a DJ, would we still need to run? This, Old Pig hesitated for a moment. He really wanted to add, didn't the train playing the DJ run away, but he kept the words to himself. He only added weakly. There might be quite a few man-eating spider pups in Taiping City right now. Killing them would drop a lot of goodies. There shouldn't be anyone competing with us right now. Chen Mang was silent for a moment, then glanced at Old Pig and said hoarsely, get on the train. We're going to Taiping City. Do you know the way? Inside the train, Chen Mang sped along, following the obvious trails in the wasteland. These were the tracks left by the man-eating spiders during their nighttime travels. Following them would quickly lead him to Taiping City. After all, The vast wasteland was nearly barren, with few good reference points. Old Pig didn't know the way either. He glanced at the energy stone on the train's head. 72%. It's okay, it'll last for a while. He only has 313 units of iron ore left. He originally planned to go back and mine more to build the crafting station, but Old Pig's suggestion was somewhat tempting. Without the boss protecting the cub, it would be unjust not to return and kill it. By then, the exterior of the star train was already covered in brown-red bloodstains, which, under the sun, emitted a foul odor. After traveling for a full 4 hours, Chen Mang finally saw the ruins of a modern city on the distant horizon. However, many tall buildings had collapsed, and the entire city looked shattered. As he got closer, more scenes came into view. There were traces of fierce fires, cars piled up on the road, and fallen leaves and garbage scattered on the ground, but not a single body was visible. Chen Mang took in the scene in silence. The scene before him gave him a clearer understanding of his journey to a post-apocalyptic world. He had been in the wasteland for the past few days, with not a single trace of human civilization in sight. In such an environment, how many survivors could hide here? As the train neared the ruins of the city, Chen Mang slowly slowed down, finally stopping at the edge of the ruins. It could go no further. A vast assortment of cars and collapsed buildings lay piled in front of it, making it impossible for the train to proceed. They would have to walk the rest of the way. In the distance, a massive spider web stretched across the sky. A massive web, woven from strands of spider silk several times the thickness of an arm, stretched from building to building. The surrounding area was covered in traces of corrosion from a viscous green liquid. Many cars and buildings were pierced by scattered strands of spider silk. The ground was littered with scattered spider silk, which shot out like bullets, easily piercing reinforced concrete structures. There were even a lot of heavy machine gun shells, scattered guns, and several abandoned carriages on the ground. Later, they could be consumed in the Earth's core furnace, and at the same time, see if the abandoned cars could be broken down into iron ore. It was clear that a fierce battle had taken place here. What a stroke of luck, Chen Mang muttered as he stood at the edge of the ruins, gazing at the scene before him. It looked like the level 3 man-eating spider's silk and venom had been exhausted here, otherwise he might have been in grave danger. Of course, if he ever had the chance to publish an autobiography, he certainly wouldn't reveal this lucky escape. He would instead record how he instantly killed a level 3 man-eating spider boss with the power of a freshly entered level 2 train. And on that massive spider web, about a dozen small spiders were suspended in midair by a single strand of silk. These were the man-eating spider's hatchlings. Baozi, Chen Mang waved his hand to call Baozi over, patted his shoulder and whispered, "Take the brothers and guys, go kill all these cubs, and then bring back all the dropped things. Hurry up, this is not a place to stay for long. Come back as soon as the mission is completed, and then we will return. Do you understand?" "Understood." Baozi nodded seriously, then waved his hand, and the other 9 thugs took enough magazines and some car blade fragments, and quickly crossed the ruins, trotting towards the huge spider web. "Master Mang," at the edge of the ruins, Lao Zu hesitated and said, "How about I go with you? What if they run away and don't come back?" "If they run away, then run away." Chen Mang stood on the edge of the ruins with his cane in both hands, looking at the spider web that covered the sky between several high-rise buildings, and whispered calmly, "People should allow anyone to leave you at any time, and don't spend too much energy on it. In this world, anyone may leave at any time, but you can't not use him just because he might leave. There are risks when a ship goes out to sea, but ships are not built to stay at the dock all the time. Okay, pay attention to the surrounding situation. A cub like this can't be born by a spider. I always have a sense of unease. It's better to complete the mission as soon as possible and leave here." Chapter 34. I will return this life to you. Everyone, at the edge of the ruined city, Baozi, his Tamron assault rifle slung across his back, clutching a fragment of a wheeled blade wrapped in cloth, spoke in a sincere, hoarse voice as he swiftly moved through the ruins. "We've all been getting along pretty well these past few days. Admittedly, I know some of you might still be unconvinced, but I want you to understand one thing: the danger level rises dramatically once you leave the train. No matter what you think of me, I hope we remain a united team out there, so we can return safely to the train. Do you understand?" The words trailed off. "Understood." Baozi's old men, Haiwa and another burly man, were the first to respond, followed by the others in earnest, low voices. This was no longer the first day of the apocalypse, and everyone knew the dangers of not working together in such an environment. Only the man who had been beaten up by Ozzy and Hiwa a few days ago still sneered in dissatisfaction. It had to be said. This man was truly stubborn. He'd been unconvinced from the start, and even after being beaten, he still refused to give in. He simply refused to give in. Ozzy tilted his head to glance at the sneering man, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he remained silent. He saw a silent zombie wolf appear behind the man, trapped in the container beneath the rubble. Its eyes glowed red, its body slightly hunched, its limbs tense, ready to strike at any moment. He noticed this, but didn't react, pretending to see nothing. He pointed to an open area not far ahead and whispered, "Go that way. It's the best spot under the spider webs." All the thugs followed Ozzy's direction. Just then, a sharp, piercing sound suddenly rang out. The dormant zombie wolf finally gave up, unleashing its limbs like an arrow, lunging at the back of the sneering man. "Be careful." Ozzy, who was the first to react, suddenly looked pale and rushed over, throwing the man to the side. The other thugs also reacted instantly, aiming their guns at the zombie wolf that missed, and fired half a magazine. The zombie wolf, riddled with bullet holes, fell in a pool of blood. The man who was pinned under Ozzy only realized it belatedly. He looked at the zombie wolf with fear on his face, and felt a chill down his spine. Ozzy also stood up with a grim expression, his right hand tightly covering his left arm, blood flowing through his fingers. He cut a piece of cloth from his clothes and bandaged the wound. Brother Bao, the man who had just sneered, suddenly felt ashamed. With a faint voice, he stepped forward to support Ozzy. "Brother Bao, I didn't think you'd save me. I didn't believe you at first. You actually saved me. It's okay." Ozzy shook his head expressionlessly, not even a frown on his face, perfectly showcasing his tough guy style. After hastily bandaging the wound, he patted the man's shoulder and whispered softly, "Whether it's you or anyone else, I will save you. Since I'm your captain, I must get you back to the train alive. That's my responsibility. Even if someone has to die, I'll be the first to die. Otherwise, how can I face you, Mr. Mang, and you?" "Okay, let's continue on our journey. Complete the mission quickly and report back." The man who hadn't surrendered even after being beaten up suddenly gave in. Only someone like him was qualified to be their captain. He had endured so much hostility since the apocalypse. But this was the first time someone was willing to sacrifice themselves to save him. He suddenly felt a strong sense of teamwork. He immediately stood there, fists clenched, staring at Ozzy's retreating figure. Through clenched teeth, he uttered hoarsely, "Brother Bao, my name is Chen Mang. I'll give you this life." Ozzy, who was walking ahead of the other man, heard the voice behind him and inadvertently raised the corner of his mouth. He coughed softly and waved his hand without turning back. "Hurry up and catch up, don't fall behind." Fighting him. He really thought he could be a captain just because he could take a beating and fight? These days, you have to rely on your brains to get out there, don't you understand? His left arm wasn't injured by the zombie wolf. He hadn't controlled his strength well, and the zombie wolf had only grazed him, leaving him unharmed. In desperation, he could only secretly use the wheel blade fragment to stab his left arm. Of course, he wasn't that aggressive. It was just a light scratch, a little blood. It would heal in a few days with a bandage, and it would be almost healed without stitches. The wheel blade fragment was new, it hadn't been used on the man-eating spider. This kind of thing only works when there's blood. Without it, the effect would be much less. Saving someone for absolutely no cost versus saving someone only after paying a price creates a different feeling for the person being rescued. He'd actually considered just letting the mountain cat die here. However, if casualties occurred on his first mission, while understandable, it would certainly lower Mang's opinion of him, which wouldn't be good. Mang also knew that the mountain cat didn't respect him very much. If the mountain cat died after one trip, Mang couldn't help but resent it. He'd originally thought that if the mountain cat didn't remember his kindness, he'd find another opportunity to kill him. But surprisingly, despite being a bit stubborn and short-sighted, the kid still remembered his gratitude. The distance wasn't too far, but the collapsed buildings and congested streets slowed the progress considerably. And along the way, they'd actually encountered 3 zombie wolves. Apparently, with the departure of the level 3 man-eating spider, some monsters had sensed its presence and were coming to investigate. "We're here." 20 minutes later. Ozzy raised his right hand slightly, and the team immediately stopped on the rooftop of a ruined low-rise building. After what had just happened, the other thugs had become quite convinced and obeyed his orders. In the apocalypse, who wouldn't want a boss willing to save them in times of crisis? Before them lay a massive spiderweb weaving between several tall buildings. About a dozen tiny spitterlings were suspended in mid-air by the silk, drifting slowly in the wind about 10 meters above the ground. Beneath the web lay about 24 level 1 zombie wolves, their heads raised as they gazed at the floating pups, their drooling saliva dripping down their cheeks. Brother Bao, Haiwa came close to Baozi and whispered, "These 20-odd zombie wolves were not on the plan. I feel like something is wrong. Even the zombie wolves are here, so I guess other monsters in the wasteland will be here soon." Normal. Baozi narrowed his eyes slightly. "I've never seen a plan without accidents. It's like when we worked on construction sites before, no client paid on time. You'll get used to it, quick battle and quick decision. There are only more than 20 little wolf cubs. Everyone load your guns, get closer and then fire, keep moving forward quietly." At this time, they were about 30 meters away from the zombie wolves. At this distance, the hit rate of the bullets was difficult to guarantee. If they got closer, the hit rate of the bullets would increase a lot. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Master Mang. This time we have gained quite a lot. After all, they were just 10 men armed with fully automatic rifles, and those 20-plus zombie wolves were easily dispatched before they even got close. But, Baozi frowned slightly and glanced at the men around him. Their coordination wasn't quite there yet. Their targets were too random, often with several people aiming at a single wolf. But there was nothing he could do. He'd just have to slowly train again after returning to the train. He wasn't a professional, and no one here was either. He could only slowly identify problems through actual combat and improve. He then ordered all his thugs to aim and fire at the spitterlings overhead, while he began checking each zombie wolf one by one. When he was done, he sighed with regret. Nothing had dropped. This was his first field mission, and naturally, he hoped to get as much as he could, so he could feel more confident when he returned. However, Baozi's eyes quickly lit up, noticing a nearby tobacco shop, the one he'd mentioned with a hidden compartment. He strode over, ready to plunder. He certainly didn't need another one. The battle was over quickly. Although it was a moving target, its movements weren't drastic, making it relatively easy to hit. The cubs' defenses were also low. Baozi, who had rushed back, ordered the others to remain on guard while he stuffed each of the glowing items dropped from the ground into a sack he'd picked up from the convenience store. When he saw a familiar dropped item, he was startled for a moment, then couldn't help but rub the back of his head and grin. "Damn, I've got it this time, Master Mang. Master Mang, this is a killer move. How can you block it?" A token emitting a milky white glow lay quietly in the open space. It was the train token. 30 minutes later, Chen Mang, who had been standing under the train, finally saw Baozi and his group sprinting towards him from the ruins of the city. He breathed a sigh of relief. Honestly, the feeling of unease here was far greater than in the wasteland. Mainly because of the collapsed buildings everywhere, and the limited routes for trains to travel. It wasn't as vast and open as in the wasteland, where they could roam freely wherever they pleased. Soon, Baozi and the others ran to the train. Baozi grinned and dumped the sacks he was carrying on his shoulders on the ground. "Master Mang, we've got quite a haul this time. It's all in here. By the way, that tobacco shop I told the deputy conductor about last time is nearby. I went in and grabbed some cigarettes. Master Mang, do you think you can use them?" Okay. Chen Mang said yes 3 times, then smiled and waved his hand for someone nearby to carry the items to the locomotive. He looked at the blood-soaked bandage on Baozi's left arm and was about to say something when he felt the ground shake. He instinctively turned around and saw a dark mass of zombies appearing in the distance, rapidly swarming towards the ruins of the city. "Get on board." Chen Mang immediately jumped into the locomotive, and the others quickly climbed into the number 3 living car without delay. Boom! With the roar of the engine, the train, its exterior covered in blood, roared back along its original route, passing by the tide of zombies. The zombie encirclement had informed Yet, and they discovered it early enough, So with their speed, it was impossible for the zombies to catch up. Inside the train, Chen Mang leaned his upper body out of the skylight, gazing at the dark cloud of zombies behind him. For some reason, a wave of exhilaration washed over him, a feeling of sheer satisfaction. This feeling of nipping at the edge of a knife is like the deadliest poison. It's truly exhilarating. Just wait. Once his train is upgraded to be powerful enough, he'll use it to completely annihilate this zombie horde, leaving you bastards chasing him for the rest of the day. In the deserted wasteland, the stellar train sped ahead, the city ruins behind it shrinking, and the intimidating black cloud of zombies gradually receding. Ho-ho! Excited, Chen Mang looked at the zombie horde, hands to his mouth, and couldn't help but roar. After completing all this, he withdrew with a sense of unfulfilled satisfaction and returned to the train. This was the happiest he had felt in all the days he had traveled through time. It had nothing to do with the train upgrades he had received, but simply because of the joy he felt. It felt like hiding in his own little room during a thunderstorm. People are naturally afraid of danger, but if you have a safe room before danger strikes, it becomes your G-spot. The more dangerous the outside, the more enjoyable it is. Chen Mang returned to the train and took a deep breath before opening the sack bios he had found. 13 cartons of cigarettes came into view. He didn't recognize the brand, but it must be a brand from this world. He quickly opened one, pulled out a pack, and lit one, bringing it to his lips. He slowly closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then opened them, smiling and exhaling a wisp of light blue smoke. He looked at the smoke lingering in the carriage, feeling a sense of peace. Smoking isn't a good habit. But in the high-pressure environment of the apocalypse, a few bad habits are necessary to provide spiritual support. Finally, he had enough cigarettes. He did nothing but sit at the console and enjoy his cigarette peacefully. Then, after opening the window and flicking out the nearly burned crimson butt, he gazed out at the rapidly receding wilderness. Suddenly, he smiled. It felt like there wasn't anything wrong with this world. In this world, with enough strength, one could do anything. Life might be shorter, but it would be more interesting. Another one. Chen Mang lit another and brought it to his lips. Then, his mood gradually calmed down, and with a smile on his face, he prepared to take stock of his gains. It's worth mentioning that the abandoned carriages where he'd killed the level 3 man-eating spider, as well as the abandoned carriages in the ruins on the edge of the city, had all been consumed by his earth core furnace, yielding a total of 500 units of iron ore. He now had 813 units. Not bad. Consuming an ordinary carriage yielded about 50 units of iron ore, effectively a 50% return. From this perspective, the primary focus of the train in the wilderness is still development. Plundering is somewhat uneconomical. No one has a train stockpiling much iron ore. What little they have is used up, leaving them unable to accumulate. Add to that the fact that ordinary people don't even have the red-grade vehicle accessory, the earth core furnace, and the risk of casualties and train damage associated with any battle. The cost-effectiveness of starting a war is even lower. Finding and mining your own mines is the most cost-effective option. Unless you have a complete advantage. Then starting a war is highly cost-effective. After all, while you can't plunder the iron ore, you can plunder slaves. The abandoned cars, on the other hand, can't be broken down into iron ore after being devoured. However, he discovered that they devour everything, making them perfect for use as a garbage dump. They could even be used to clear roadblocks, which would be a novel use. In the sack, besides 13 cartons of cigarettes, there was even a bottle of hot sauce, whose origins were unknown. What good stuff! Chen Mang put the bottle of hot sauce aside with satisfaction. He could finally change the taste of dinner later. However, what he cared about most was the items dropped by the spider cubs. After all, this was the important goal of his trip. Soon, he finished taking inventory of all the supplies. A total of 300 units of level 1 material find spider silk 2, 200 units of level 1 ore red heart rock 2. Special item, a train order 3. Green grade vehicle accessory blueprint spider leg. Chen Mang looked at the batch of things in front of him, was slightly stunned, and then he picked up the train order from the oars. After weighing it in his hand, he couldn't help laughing, tilted his head to look out a window, and exhaled a long puff of smoke. This guy, isn't he laughing now? Chapter 36 Accessory name, Spider Leg. Chen Mang casually shoved the train token into a nearby drawer, smiling and shaking his head. He had no use for it for now. Only one train could be owned by one person. He'd see if he could trade it for something else later. The rest of the harvest consisted primarily of rare resources that couldn't be found in the mines of the wasteland. They were only dropped by monsters, making them much more difficult to obtain than iron ore. They weren't as versatile as iron ore, though most parts wouldn't be used. Unlike iron ore, which could be used to make bread, they were. Tisk, how wonderful. No need for iron. But this vehicle component blueprint, Chen Mang looked at the light blueprint in his hand with a slightly odd expression. It was a green-grade vehicle component, not a low-quality one, but its effect was. He looked in the rearview mirror at the deserted wasteland, now devoid of the zombie hordes. He slowly slowed the train down, finally bringing it to a steady stop. He consumed another 100 units of level 1 fine spider silk to craft this thing. The next moment, the Hot Wheels beneath the train had vanished, replaced by several spider legs. Yes, they were actually wheels. Each car had 10 sets of spider legs. Now the train looked more like a giant centipede. Accessory name, spider legs. Accessory grade, green. Accessory level, level 1. Accessory effect, these sticky spider legs allow the train to navigate challenging terrain without hindrance, even allowing it to travel freely on 30-degree slopes, with a maximum speed capped at 50 km per hour. Upgrade requirements. 100 units of level 1 fine spider silk, hard to say. Sigh, Chen Mang sighed softly as he gazed at his train, which resembled a giant centipede. It wasn't that the image was ugly, but rather that he felt it was no longer a train. But the effect was truly powerful. Being able to navigate a 30-degree slope didn't mean it could climb, but rather that it could navigate a slope at that angle. While its speed is significantly lower than that of a Hot Wheels and has a speed cap, it can be very useful in some demanding terrain. However, the resource required to build and upgrade this accessory isn't iron ore, but fine spider silk. Killing a boss drops 100 units of level 2 fine spider silk. Killing a boss cub drops 300 units of level 1 fine spider silk. 100 units of level 2 spider silk equals 1000 units of level 1 spider silk, and they can be used interchangeably. This means he has a total of 1300 units of level 1 spider silk. He just used 100 units, leaving him with 1200 units. Since he couldn't find another use for it, he simply used it all to upgrade this accessory. Quickly, 200 units of spider silk were consumed to upgrade to level 2, 300 units of spider silk were consumed to upgrade to level 3. This vehicle accessory is capped at level 3 and cannot be upgraded further. Level 0 permissions detected. This vehicle accessory can be upgraded further. 400 units of spider silk were consumed to upgrade to level 4. It could only be upgraded to level 4. He was running low on silk. Level 5 required 500 units of silk, and he only had 300 units left. At this point, the panel for this level had also undergone a subtle change, can freely navigate 45-degree slopes, with a fixed maximum speed of 80 km per hour. Chen Mang stared blankly at the panel display of the spider leg accessory. He once again felt that his add-on was somewhat outrageous. It was almost the same as just turning it on. What kind of concept was it to be able to freely navigate 45-degree slopes? It would be basically useless in the wasteland. But he couldn't stay there forever. Once he reached other rugged terrain, this thing would come in handy. It was perfect for both traveling and escaping. Especially since it could be upgraded further. At level 13, it could directly navigate 90-degree slopes, meaning it could drive on walls. At level 31, it could reach 180 degrees, allowing it to drive directly on ceilings, facing the ground. It somewhat defied common sense. But he liked it. To be precise, it wasn't the spider leg accessory that was outrageous, but his plugin. Very good, Chen Mang laughed. His only regret was that he didn't have enough spider silk. He hadn't upgraded his spider leg to level 5, which would have unlocked another supermodel effect. He liked this thing. Especially with a red-grade vehicle accessory, the wheel changer, he could seamlessly swap between the two sets of wheels. He quickly retracted the spider leg and lowered the Hot Wheels again. Then, following the trail, he sped back the way he'd come. Destination, the mine. Mission, continue mining. Inside living carriage number 3. Shen Maozi stood beside Baozi with an apologetic look on his face. Brother Bao, let me check if the wound is serious. There's no medicine on the train. What if it gets infected or something? Baozi coughed softly before carefully unwrapping the bandage around his left arm. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just didn't want you to die there. We're in the same group. Just as the bandage was removed, the wound was barely visible. Biozi's mouth twitched slightly, and he rewrapped a bandage with lightning speed, calmly shaking his head. There's still the blood of the man-eating spider outside the train. We can't untie the wound to check. If it gets infected, it'll be terrible. As long as you're willing to do that, it's okay. I can handle this little injury. Go get some rest. Everyone's been up all night, so you're all pretty sleepy. I'll be on guard later. When you wake up, I'll take over. He hadn't been violent at the time. He'd just rubbed the wound with a broken blade. Although the wound hadn't scabbed yet, the blood had already clotted and stopped bleeding. There was no need to show such a wound to others. Chen Mang's eyes flushed slightly, and he obediently walked to a corner of the carriage, wordlessly closing his eyes and falling asleep. Soon, most of the people in the carriage were asleep. They hadn't slept during the day, had spent the night chiseling man-eating spiders, and had killed a batch of young this morning. They were already stretched to their limits, both physically and mentally. The rocking of the train made it easy to fall asleep. Brother Bao, after seeing that everyone had fallen asleep, Heihao came over and said cautiously, "Brother Bao, you just handed over the train order so naturally? I saw you so excited at that time, and I thought you were going to set up your own business with your brothers again. I was ready to call you Uncle Bao again, silly road deer." Baozi rolled his eyes at Heihao with disdain. "Was that the train order I handed over? It was a letter of surrender, a golden medal of immunity from death, you know shit." Chapter 37 Good luck on the start of the work. Baozi snorted coldly before narrowing his eyes and continuing. In the apocalypse, the sense of trust between people is extremely weak. It is very difficult to get the train conductor to trust you completely. Let alone other things. How can we prove that we have handed over all the harvest this time? This is almost an unsolvable proposition, but it's different with a train order. We have handed over everything that can be used to start a business on our own. Do you think that Master Mang still doesn't trust us? Although Lao Zu followed Master Mang at first, after this incident, Master Mang probably trusts me more now. Do you believe it? What's more, Baozi sighed helplessly, it's not like I haven't started a business on my own before. You two know what the end was. Let's not talk about anything else. We followed those train conductors, and didn't we all die in the end? Being a boss is not that easy. Besides, the boss this time is different. He narrowed his eyes and murmured, even if ordinary car blade fragments are upgraded to the maximum level, they cannot break through the defense of the level 3 man-eating spider. As long as this train can develop, our status and living environment will be much better than if we started a business on our own. Alright, you won't understand even if I tell you this. Anyway, all you need to know is this, just follow Master Mang and work hard. Oh, Heihao nodded weakly and said, every time you say that, the conductor dies a few days later. That was before, this is now. Master Mang is different from other conductors. 5 hours later, the train finally returned to its original iron ore location. He looked at the familiar surroundings and the mine, and for a moment, he even felt a sense of familiarity. It was already noon. A strong sense of sleepiness washed over him. He hadn't slept for a long time. He gave Baozi a few instructions on the intercom and arranged for someone to stand guard. Then, after everyone had rested to replenish their energy, he walked to the bed inside the train and, without even taking off his clothes, fell down. So sleepy. Go to sleep first. Wait until I wake up. Perhaps it was because he had been up too long, because when he woke up, it was already 4 or 5 in the morning of the next day. Chen Mang hurriedly washed up in the train compartment in a daze, then jumped out of the train compartment with a cigarette in his mouth. He saw that the wasteland was already quite lively at this time, and many slaves came out of the carriages one after another and headed for the mine. Master Mang, seeing Chen Mang wake up, Lao Zu, who was giving orders nearby, hurried over and reported, some slaves woke up early. They said they couldn't sleep and wanted to go down to the mines. I thought about it and didn't dare to bother you with such a small matter, so I agreed. Over there, they're distributing bread slices and water to the slaves who just woke up. We should dig a lot of ore today. Many people go down to the mines at 2 or 3 in the morning. Oh, a hint of surprise flashed in Chen Mang's eyes. Are they all so enthusiastic? Yeah, Lao Zu said a little strangely. I asked a few people, and their answer was that the level 3 man-eating spider scared them. They don't want to die. They want to dig more ore to make the train stronger quickly, so that it will be safer. You're aware. Chen Mang couldn't help laughing. Then he took out 2 packs of cigarettes from his arms and threw them into Laoji's arms. Give one to you and Baozi and the others, and one to the slaves. As long as they work hard, they won't be treated unfairly. The enthusiasm of the slaves must be mobilized. Human potential is unlimited. Alright, get on with your work. Okay, Old Pig replied, then hurried over to maintain order and handed each slave 2 cigarettes. Chen Mang gazed at the bustling scene not far away. Standing in the night breeze, he glanced at the starry sky, chuckling softly without saying anything. Having such a deputy was quite good, at least he didn't have to worry about these trivial matters. Then he walked alone to the back of the train. He lit 3 cigarettes, one after another, and plunged them into the wasteland. Then, with a calm expression, he clasped his hands together, looked up at the sky, and muttered, "Good luck with the start of the work. May God bless me to stay here and continue mining for 7 days. By then, this mine will be almost finished, and we can look for the next one." Although the accident with the man-eating spider had brought him a considerable reward, not every accident had a happy ending. It was best to avoid accidents if possible. After praying sincerely several times, he removed the 3 cigarettes stuck in the ground, brushed off the dirt on the tail, stuffed all 3 into his mouth, and walked towards the front of the train, leaning on his cane with one hand. In the apocalypse, tobacco is a scarce commodity, so don't waste it. Just show your appreciation. 3 cigarettes at a time, it's quite potent. Inside the train. After getting off the train and taking a stroll around, Chen Mang returned to the control panel and pressed the red button labeled Vehicle Parts. Immediately, the screen next to him displayed the 12 craftable vehicle parts after the train reached level 2, Train Radio, Green Grade Part, crafting requires 500 units of iron ore. Crafting Table, Green Grade Part, crafting requires 500 units of iron ore. 3-legged heavy machine gun, Green Grade Part, crafting requires 500 units of iron ore. 12.7 mm heavy machine gun bullet production line, Green Grade Part, crafting requires 500 units of copper ore. Search radar, Green Grade Part, crafting requires 500 units of iron ore. Resource detection radar, Green Grade Component, requires 500 units of iron ore to craft. These 6 components are mandatory and essential for upgrading the train to level 3. They are all very useful. In addition, there are 6 vehicle components that are not mandatory. Car audio, white grade component, requires 100 units of iron ore to craft. Internal fire control system, green grade component, requires 1000 units of iron ore to craft. 5.56 mm rifle ammunition production line, green grade component, requires 500 units of copper ore to craft. Custom clothing production line, white grade component, requires 100 units of wood to craft. Simple first aid kit, white grade component, requires 100 units of iron ore to craft. Train assist AI, green grade component, requires 500 units of iron ore to craft. There is no extra red grade vehicle component this time. It seems that the rare train order only grants 2 red grade vehicle components. After the train reaches level 2, the available components are significantly more powerful than those at level 1. He wanted every one of the 12 craftable components, desperately needed every one. However, crafting them all and upgrading them to a certain level would require considerable resources. He also wanted to mount 2 heavy machine guns on the roofs of each of his carriages, for a supreme sense of security. However, the heavy machine gun ammunition production line required copper ore, and producing the ammunition would undoubtedly require a significant amount of copper, something he had yet to find. It's a long and arduous journey, Chen Mang sighed, gazing out into the depths of the wasteland. He wondered when he would finally have a fully equipped level 2 train. Chapter 38 Start Spending. Chen Mang came back to his senses and continued to look at the series of vehicle accessories on the screen next to the control panel. He currently had 831 units of iron ore. First, upgrade the moldy bread production line to level 2. See what changes will occur. After consuming 100 units of iron ore, the panel quickly changed accordingly. Accessory name, moldy bread production line. Accessory grade, white. Accessory level, level 2. Accessory effect, for every unit of iron ore consumed, 10 slices of bread can be produced. Upgrade condition, upgraded to the maximum level. Not bad, Chen Mang nodded slightly. After the upgrade, the quality of the bread slices was improved while the consumption remained the same. The upper limit of white grade vehicle accessories was basically level 2. Of course, this upper limit was meaningless to him, but he had no intention of upgrading further for the time being. Enough. From moldy bread slices to normal bread slices. Theoretically, eating too much moldy food can be life-threatening. However, after his first business venture failed in his previous life, he ate moldy steamed buns for a month and survived. Simply removing the mold spots will cure the problem. In this kind of environment, no one cares whether it's moldy or not. However, it's definitely not suitable for long-term consumption. Upgrading it can reduce the chance of slaves getting sick. That Mr. Kun, once a level 2 train conductor, didn't bother to spend 100 units of iron ore to upgrade this component to level 2. No, he didn't even bother to build universal wheels. I wonder where he spent all his resources. Universal wheels are a special component that significantly improves the train's maneuverability, allowing for tighter cornering curves. At a high enough level, it can even be moved sideways into storage. It's not one of the 12 craftable components and cannot be upgraded. The level will automatically align with the current train level. He then upgraded a purified water filter to level 2, and the panel changed accordingly. Component name, purified water filter. Component grade, white. Component level, level 2. Accessory effect, each slice of moldy bread consumed produces 1 bottle of mineral water. Upgrade requirements, max level reached. While it requires a moldy slice of bread, non-moldy bread will also work. 1 unit of iron ore can produce 10 bottles of mineral water. At this point, the entire train had almost all the basic amenities. While not perfect, at least food and water were no longer a problem. In the apocalypse, having these conditions was enough to survive. He didn't want to waste resources on necessities anymore, so he focused on improving both defense and attack. In the wilderness, danger is always a constant theme. In the mines. Hiss, a dusty, middle-aged man, feeling a little sore, paused his work. He placed his pickaxe on the ground, sat down on the handle, and carefully pulled a wrinkled cigarette from his jacket pocket. He held it horizontally to his nose, sniffed it, and exhaled with a look of satisfaction and intoxication before stuffing the cigarette back into his pocket. He murmured with some emotion. Before the apocalypse, I really didn't want to smoke cigarettes at this price, and now I really can't bear to smoke them, yo. The young man next to him also stopped what he was doing, shook his sore arms, and teased, it seems like you used to be a big shot. Now you can accept this kind of difference as a slave. The middle-aged man was silent for a moment before he said softly, I wasn't a big shot before, just middle class, my income is not low. I make as much in a year as an average person in 10 years, but to be honest, I'm several times more anxious than many people. I'm always worried about my income falling. I don't want to go back to the life of an ordinary person. To maintain a glamorous life, my spirit has weakened to the point that I often have a strong sense of impending death. Now I feel much more at ease as a slave. Apart from worrying about whether I can see the sun tomorrow, there's nothing else to worry about. Oh, the young man became interested and moved closer with some curiosity. Then you haven't thought about climbing up the ladder, becoming a deputy train conductor or something? The middle-aged man shook his head. It's not that easy to climb up the ladder. Although everyone wants to be the deputy conductor, someone has to be a slave for the train to run stably and develop. Now that the power structure is basically stable, if you try to climb up at this point, you'll easily be made an example of, and this conductor treats his slaves pretty well. Not only does he feed them every day, but he also gives them 2 cigarettes, which are absolutely scarce in the apocalypse. That's true. The young man patted the 2 cigarettes in his pocket and grinned. He was actually quite receptive to the apocalypse. Before the apocalypse, he was an orphan with no money to buy a house, no savings, and no parents. He only earned 2,800 yuan a month. Everyone looked down on him, calling him a loser. After the apocalypse, everyone was losers, and no one looked down on him anymore. How wonderful. He felt that being a loser was fine. He had never thought of making a name for himself in his life. If the sky fell, it would have to hit the high ones first. Soon, with the sun rising and setting, the day passed. As the slaves returned, each carrying their pickaxes, and lined up in a long line at the front of the train to receive their food for the day, a large quantity of iron ore was also brought back. Huh? A man took a slice of bread from Old Pig and instinctively tried to pick off the moldy spots, only to find it was perfectly intact. Not only was there no mold, but it also exuded a malty aroma. After a moment's pause, he looked up at Old Pig in bewilderment. Here, Old Pig smiled and waved, signaling the next person to take over. Master Mang appreciates your hard work in the mining industry. From now on, all the slaves' bread will be of this quality. Work hard, and you'll have everything you need." The man quickly realized what was happening. With eyes filled with gratitude and excitement, he hurriedly thanked them, then eagerly ran to a corner to savor the pristine bread. Inside the train, Chen Mang, leaning on his cane with one hand, turned his gaze away from the slaves outside the window. It was already around 9 o'clock in the evening, and many slaves had worked for 16 or 17 hours straight. He'd been working since the early hours of last night. He'd even sent Bai Ozzy down to deliver some food and water. He was genuinely worried the slaves would die of exhaustion in the mines. They were truly ruthless, working hard when they had to. Of course, the harvest was plentiful, too. Today, they'd mined 1,620 units. The most they'd mined in a single day. Adding in the iron ore he still had left, the train now held 2,251 units. That was enough for him to build a lot of things. Start squandering. Chen Mang's eyes quickly scanned the component names on the screen, and he began to prioritize the different components. Chapter 39 God bless, nothing will happen tomorrow. First, he built another ordinary carriage, consuming 100 units of iron ore. This was what he had promised the slaves long ago, to give them more living space. However, the ordinary carriage he had built was scrapped during the boss battle. The next step, of course, was the crafting table. After consuming 500 units of iron ore, a green-grade accessory crafting table was also built and placed in cargo car number 2. Currently, the only item it could craft was the energy stone. The crafting table was level 1, and consuming 500 units of iron ore would produce one level 1 energy stone. Craft, quickly. Chen Mang left the train compartment and walked to cargo car number 2. He took a diamond the size of a pigeon egg from a crafting table resembling a square box and carefully examined it in his hands. This thing was the energy stone. He then placed the energy stone in the generator. The next moment, the lights in every carriage of the train instantly lit up, radiating a sense of warmth even across the wasteland. The essence of human civilization cannot exist without electricity. The existence of this item makes human society appear more civilized. Currently, there were no electrical devices on his train. Just these light bulbs, and this energy stone could power the generator for over 300 days. He had no plans to create another one. The locomotive still had 62% of its energy stone remaining. He would build more when it was almost gone. In case of an emergency, he could simply remove the energy stone from the generator and load it into the locomotive. These two items cost him 1,000 units of iron ore. The train radio was a must-build priority. Communication would ensure the train wasn't isolated in the wilderness, costing 500 units of iron ore. The search radar was also a high priority. It would provide basic safety while the train was stationed in the wilderness, also costing 500 units of iron ore. So far, he had already used up 2,100 units of iron ore, leaving only 151 units. Inside the train, having squandered nearly all of the iron ore mined today, Chen Mang let out a long sigh, his first glance at the green panel of the search radar. Part name, search radar. Part grade, green. Part level, level 1. Accessory effect, within a 1,000-meter radius of the train, any living creature not on board will be alerted. Upgrade requirements. 1,000 units of iron ore. A rectangular screen composed of countless white lines appeared out of thin air on the left side of the control console. When the white lines faded, the screen lit up. A green circle of light appeared on the screen, with a three-dimensional aerial view of the stellar train in its center. Nearly 100 green dots of light were visible inside and around the train, while no red dots were visible within the entire circle of light. Although the accessories effect stated that any living creature approaching would be alerted, it now appeared that these creatures only included other humans and monsters, not small insects. The screen was powered by electricity, and he had already completed the entire train's electrical system when he was still working on the level 1 train. At the front of the train, a small, palm-sized bump appeared. This was the external enemy detection radar. When it detected an approaching enemy, it would sound an alarm. However, since he lacked the onboard audio accessory, no sound could be emitted, so the warnings were only displayed via a graphic display on the screen. Chen Mang raised an eyebrow and spent another 100 units of iron ore to craft a white-grade vehicle accessory, the onboard speaker. This accessory was a speaker set. A large speaker was mounted outside the locomotive. Inside the train, 6 smaller speakers were embedded in the corners, and each car also had 6 speakers, located in the front, middle, and back. Warnings, as well as sounds from accessories like the train's auxiliary AI, would then be emitted through the speakers. He could also use the speakers to accurately convey his orders to every member of the train crew immediately. He could even emulate that level 2 train, roaring and recklessly through the wasteland while playing DJ music. His pockets were truly empty now. All gone, only 51 units of iron ore. He needed to save some to make food and water tomorrow morning. It was night time. Everyone was asleep, and a few thugs were patrolling outside the train. Chen Mang couldn't sleep, so he simply walked out of the train compartment with his cane. He walked to an open space not far away and gazed at his star train, which lay quietly on the ground like a sleeping giant. A sense of satisfaction suddenly washed over him. This train had originally consisted of only a simple locomotive, but now, under his control, it was gradually becoming fully grown. The feeling was indescribable, like a child growing up. It was worth mentioning that although the spider-legged wheels were modeled after spider legs, they were not real flesh and blood, but rather mechanical steel structures. At first glance, they looked a bit out of place with a train, but after a closer look, one could sense the explosive power contained within the mechanical train, the tension and charm of mechanical products. Chen Mang sat on the cracked ground of the wasteland, his expression a bit dazed, gazing at the sleeping giant in the distance under the starry night sky. The crimson cigarette butt flickered faintly at his fingertips. He did nothing. He just watched quietly. His mind was empty. He simply admired his creation, as if appreciating a rare work of art. After a long moment, he looked down at the cigarette butt that had gone out at his fingertips, then casually tossed it aside. He suddenly understood why male lions so often patrol their territories. It was an indescribable sense of pride and satisfaction. It was wonderful. At that moment, the cane in his arms suddenly trembled slightly, and a tiny curved screen appeared on its surface. It was a miniature display of the enemy radar, showing 3 red dots slowly approaching the train. Before he could say anything, he saw the thugs patrolling the area around the train approaching with guns drawn. After several shots, silence returned to the wilderness, and the red dots vanished. Chen Mang chuckled softly, then continued to sit there, shaking his head without saying anything. It seemed that after the previous incidents, these thugs had become much more alert. There had been sporadic monster attacks today as well. But this actually gave him a sense of peace of mind. At least this means there aren't any terrifying bosses nearby. The Hot Wheels priority should be raised. Speed in the wasteland means survival in many situations. Once all the necessary parts are crafted, then targeted upgrades to the highest priority parts will be made. He stood up, dusted off his pants, and slowly walked toward the locomotive with his cane. Hope tomorrow will be another peaceful day. God bless, tomorrow will be safe. Chapter 40 Train Radio. The autumn night breeze still felt chilling. After sitting in the wilderness for a while, Chen Mang rose and headed for the train interior. As he undressed and prepared to go to bed, he noticed out of the corner of his eye that the number on the control panel seemed to jump. He immediately stepped forward to take a closer look. After a thorough inspection, he discovered that the remaining capacity of the energy stone embedded in the locomotive had dropped to 61%. Chen Mang stared at the number expressionlessly, silent for a long time. It had been at 62% during the day. The train had been stationary all day, and the blades hadn't been running. How could the energy capacity have inexplicably dropped by 1%? Thinking about it, he realized this energy stone issue seemed serious, but he hadn't had the time to pay attention to it these days. With the current load capacity of his train, one energy stone could probably sustain full speed for 100 hours. When he was heading to Taiping City, the train had 72% remaining. The round trip took about 10 hours, and the energy stone dropped from 72% to 62%. This was normal. An hour of full speed consumes roughly 1% of the energy stone. But he hadn't driven the train far before heading to Taiping City. Just after the battle with the man-eating spider, it had already consumed nearly 30% of its capacity. He had originally thought the wheel blade was an energy black hole. After all, the energy required to keep the wheel blade spinning at high speed came from the energy stone in the locomotive. He hadn't thought about it too deeply. But he hadn't done anything today, and the energy stone had inexplicably dropped by 1%. This was a serious problem. Could the energy stone have been affected by the battle? Chen Mang walked forward to carefully examine the energy stone embedded in the locomotive. There was no crack in it. How could the energy disappear so inexplicably? After a moment's hesitation, he didn't fall asleep immediately. Instead, he turned on the newly built accessory train radio to see if he could exchange some information. He immediately put on his clothes again and sat at the control panel, looking at a green button next to it. After pressing it, a chat room-style chat box immediately appeared on the screen. The top right corner showed that there were 397 people in this chat room. Messages were popping up on the screen from time to time. Bloodthirsty Bull Train, did that level 3 man-eating spider in Taiping City leave? I don't see much activity in that area lately, even zombie wolves have appeared. Infinity Train, it should have left. I haven't been to the uninhabited wasteland. I've been staying in the molehills for the last few days. Hell Train, the molehills are a good place for logging, but the terrain is terrible. My train can't run there. Infinity Train, I can't run either. I'm parked at the edge, having the slaves go deep into the hills to cut down trees and then rush back. It's pretty inefficient, but there's no other way. There are too few trees in the uninhabited wasteland. There aren't enough. There are some in the city ruins, but I don't plan to go near Taiping City until I get confirmation that the man-eating spider has left. Hell Train, I remember you have a level 3 machine gun. Why are you afraid of it? Infinity Train, hey, do you know how expensive level 3 cannon shells are? I have nothing better to do. Why would I waste so many resources just to kill a boss? The man-eating spider is a fire-attributed boss, and it only drops rare fire resources and fine spider silk. I don't have any use for either of those things right now. Wouldn't it be better to save resources for something else, Bloodthirsty Bull Train, than you're wasting your time upgrading that cannon, than not wanting to use it after upgrading? It's just a waste of resources. You might as well be like me and not upgrade it at all. Infinity Train, you know shit. Having it and not using it and not having it when you need it are two completely different things, okay? If we really catch up, I can still kill you, but you'll just be waiting for death. There are no chat logs from the past, only those from after the train radio was created. Everyone's codename is the name of their train. This is a chat room only the conductor can join. The people in this chat room were likely all from this wasteland, meaning there were at least 397 Class 2 trains. This number was higher than he'd expected, considering he'd only seen a handful since his time traveling. After carefully considering his words, Chen Mang typed a line into the chat box. Excuse me, could the energy stone in the locomotive suddenly drop by 1% if it's completely idle? He'd initially worried no one would respond, but he'd been surprised by the promptness of the chatroom's enthusiastic responses. Infinity Train, well, basically not. The energy stone in the locomotive is basically only responsible for driving the train. Your other vehicle accessories that require energy are basically provided by the generator. If this is a problem, it's probably because your circuit system is not well designed, and some vehicle accessories that constantly consume energy are connected to the energy stone in the locomotive. Hell Train, +1, you must have just upgraded to level 2 train. Check the circuits for your enemy detection radar or internal fire control system, which are vehicle accessories that constantly consume energy. Are they connected to the energy stone in the locomotive? Just connect the socket to the generator. Bloodthirsty Bull Train, the circuit system is a must for level 1 trains. After upgrading to level 2, it's best to relay the circuit so that the energy stone in the locomotive is only responsible for driving the train, and all other vehicle accessories are connected to the generator. This is better. Chen Mang stood expressionlessly behind the control panel, looking at the circuit system connecting the enemy detection radar and the locomotive energy stone, and couldn't help but sigh. It's true. This old pig had seemed unpopular before, as if he wasn't aware of this. He immediately adjusted the circuits for the blades, search radar, and other energy-requiring components. Now, all the energy-consuming components on the train were connected to the generator. This time, there should be no problems. There shouldn't be any more sudden energy stone depletion issues. This train radio is truly useful. If no one had told him about this, he wouldn't have figured it out on his own. Stellar Train, thanks, guys, the problem is solved. It's really because the search radar is connected to the train's energy stone. One more question, I was in a battle yesterday that lasted less than 2 hours, and my energy stone has dropped by nearly 30%. Is this normal? These seem to be the only people online in the chat room. And he quickly received another reply. Chapter 41 Bloodthirsty Bull Train. Bloodthirsty Bull Train, it's normal. After all, some offensive vehicle accessories consume more energy. I heard that someone even used up 3 energy stones in a single battle. But you just reached level 2 not long ago. The accessories of a level 1 train basically don't require energy support. This is a bit abnormal. Infinity Train, it's indeed abnormal, but I don't know the specific situation. Hell Train, some monsters' attack methods can cause the energy stones in the locomotive to be disfigured, such as the venom of the level 3 man-eating spider boss. It is recommended to create the train assistance AI as soon as possible. It will display the specific information of the monster on the radar and tell you, which is quite useful. Infinity Train, that's definitely not the reason. This guy's train is only level 2. It can be sprayed by the venom of the level 3 man-eating spider, and the distance is not far. How can a train that has just been upgraded to level 2 be faster than the man-eating spider? It will definitely die. Hell Train, but I remember that in the No Man's Wasteland, it seems that only this monster has the means to disfigure the energy stone. Infinity Train, there must be another reason, but I'm just not sure of the specifics. If that doesn't work, then get another train order. Change the train, and restart it. This has always been the best way to solve all problems. Bloodthirsty Bull Train, go to sleep first. See you at the rally in a few days. Chen Mang silently stared at the messages scrolling through the chat room. He had a vague idea in his mind. The attack must have accidentally contaminated him with some venom, causing the locomotive's energy stone to disfigure. As long as he had the answer, it would be fine. After all, 1 energy stone was only worth 500 units of iron ore, which he could afford. Sleep. Sleepiness returned, and he undressed and collapsed onto the bed. In the blink of an eye, daybreak arrived. After a quick wash with mineral water in the train room, Chen Mang sat at a nearby table, munching on a hot steamed bun with chili sauce. As he swallowed, he looked out at the slaves who had already woken up and were preparing to go down to the mines. What a lovely bunch of worker ants. He needed more slaves. He silently planned to go after his level 2 train, once it was fully staffed, to collect more slaves. Population was the primary productive force in the wilderness. Outside the window, Ozzy and his thugs were training. He listened to the drill, which roughly involved dividing the 9 thugs into 3 groups of 3. Ozzy instructed which group would attack at the same time, ensuring that their firepower would not overlap. He didn't intervene, as he wasn't an expert in this area. He just left it to Ozzy. Soon, a day passed, and the slaves emerged from the mine again, carrying pickaxes, bringing back 1,208 units of iron ore. It was another uneventful day. Aside from a few scattered monsters, there was nothing around. But just as the iron ore was being loaded onto freight car number 2, Chen Mang suddenly felt the ground shake. It was quite strong, like an earthquake. He could even see the dust dancing on the wasteland. Before he could react, the train's speakers suddenly blared with piercing alarms. Red dots of light suddenly appeared around the aperture on the radar screen, their number rapidly increasing. Chen Mang grabbed his binoculars and peered into the distance. A massive horde of zombies was gathering, gradually forming a circle around them. Get on board. After several such experiences, the slaves and thugs had grown accustomed to the situation. They immediately ran back to the train. With a roar of its engines, the star train slowly started up, finding a vulnerable spot before the zombies could form a circle, and sped off at full speed. As for the dozens of zombies blocking the way, they were launched into the air almost instantly upon impact, their rapidly spinning blades slicing any approaching zombies in two. As long as the zombies weren't completely blocked, the threat posed by the horde wasn't particularly significant. About 10 minutes later, the zombie horde behind him was completely out of sight. Chen Mang leaned out of the skylight in the ceiling, looking behind him through binoculars. He should probably camp there tonight. The zombies should be gone by daybreak, and then he could go back to mining. However, Chen Mang's brows furrowed slightly. The radar's warning range was only a 1,000-meter radius, which was still too short. If the slaves were still in the mines, it would be difficult to escape with them. The radar also needed to be upgraded soon. Just then, he suddenly noticed several messages rapidly flashing across the train radio chat screen. Hometown train, is it an earthquake? The ground shaking is unusually strong. Infinity train, it seems so. Bloodthirsty bull train, it's that doomsday abyss again. I just happened to pass by there and saw that the abyss was shaking violently again. That's what caused the earthquake in the uninhabited wasteland. Chen Mang looked at the messages flashing across the chat room with a slightly strange expression. He learned that after the apocalypse, a chasm like an abyss appeared in this uninhabited wasteland. It was almost vertical, with no bottom visible, and its depth unknown. Because the area frequently trembled, each tremor like the gates of hell about to open, people named it a doomsday abyss. It was said that someone had used resource detection radar to detect a level 2 iron mine and a level 1 copper mine below. This was considered a high-density resource point. Level 2 iron ore was rare in the uninhabited wasteland, and copper ore was even rarer. Furthermore, all bullets were crafted from copper ore, a consumable item that would never be sufficient. The fact that the two mines were located next to each other made them even rarer. So, someone salvaged ziplines and other devices from the ruins of the city and tried to lower slaves down to dig for the ore. However, due to its extreme depth, no one had ever reached the bottom, so the attempt was abandoned, and the resource point there remained untapped. Furthermore, level 2 iron and level 1 copper mines existed elsewhere in the uninhabited wasteland. But, Chen Mang's eyes narrowed slightly, his mind racing. Where others couldn't go, he could. His spider legs could now navigate a 45-degree cross-section. Once upgraded to a certain level, they'd be able to freely navigate a 90-degree cross-section. Then, this doomsday abyss would be more than just a resource point for him, it would be a safe haven. The zombie horde would absolutely be shut out. No longer would he be driven around by the zombies like he was now. However, upgrading the spider legs required a sufficient amount of fine spider silk. Just then, he saw a message pop up in the chat room. Bloodthirsty Bull Train. I have a rare green-grade vehicle accessory blueprint for the nitrogen exhaust. Anyone want to pre-order it? Slaves, women, resources, blueprints, tobacco, anything of value is available. We'll meet at the gathering to trade. Negotiate the price privately. Gathering. Chen Mang frowned slightly. From the chatroom conversation, he learned that this was a spontaneous trading event organized by the train captains. Each gathering was held in a different location, maintained entirely by consensus. The gathering was 7 days from now. His train had only just reached level 2, so he didn't feel safe joining in the fun. But he could ask first. Star Train, does anyone have fine spider silk? Someone quickly replied. Bloodthirsty Bull Train, yes, brother, yes, we have plenty. How much do you want? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42. I'm sleepy today, let's talk about it tomorrow. How much? Chen Mang glanced at the private message from the Bloodthirsty Bull Train on the train radio and roughly calculated in his mind that he needed to upgrade his spider legs to level 13 in order to navigate the 90-degree slope freely, which meant he needed 8,100 units of level 1 fine spider silk. After he sent this number, there was no reply for a long time. A moment later, a private message came in. Bloodthirsty Bull Train, not that much? I only have 1,500 units of level 1 fine spider silk, all dropped by killing man-eating spiders. However, a few trains went to Taiping City to hunt man-eating spider hatchlings a few days ago. They should have some spider silk as well. Let's meet at the gathering. What are you offering? Chen Mang glanced at his train panel. He didn't seem to have anything to trade. He couldn't bear to part with his slaves, and he was short on resources. The only thing he could offer was the cart blade shard. This thing, once attached to a pickaxe, became a powerful melee weapon capable of breaking through the defenses of level 3 or even level 4 monsters. While it only had the ability to penetrate defenses, its power was another matter, but it was still impressive enough. He just didn't want to show it to the public, as it would reveal too much information. Suddenly, he realized he had nothing worth trading. After a moment's hesitation, he replied, "We'll talk about it when we meet at the rally." The train order might be exchanged, but he'd first need to get a rough idea of the going rate at the rally. The night was late, and the crowd was still. Chen Mang stopped paying attention to the train radio. He'd have to camp out tonight. He had no idea where the headlights on the level 2 train with the DJ playing had come from. They weren't among the 12 craftable vehicle parts. He still had 1,230 units of iron ore in the train. He had already planned how to spend it. First, craft all the necessary parts for the train, then gradually upgrade them. Since he'd decided to go to the rally in 7 days, he needed to build a few basic heavy machine guns and mount them on the roofs of the train cars. Never mind the ammunition, outsiders wouldn't know how much ammunition was stored inside the cars. At least a few more of these things would increase the deterrent effect, preventing him from being targeted by thugs. Just building the heavy machine gun ammunition production line requires 500 units of copper ore, and he only has 10 units of copper ore on his train, which is not enough. As for tonight, he spent a total of 1,100 units of iron ore to craft 3 accessories: the train assist AI, the resource detection radar, and the simple medical kit. The first 2 are green-grade accessories, while the last is white. After building the train assist AI, a screen appeared on the control panel. This AI will assist the train conductor during driving and stationing, such as determining the slope ahead, checking the damage level of various train components in real time, and providing accurate information about monsters within radar range. It's a very useful accessory. The resource detection radar, like the enemy radar, has a detection range of 1 kilometer at level 1. When a resource point is detected within this range, a beep will sound and display the information on the screen. There are currently no resource points nearby. The simple medical kit only costs 100 units of iron ore and is a single-use item. Inside were some basic supplies, such as bandages, disinfectant, spray, and suture kits, primarily for treating external injuries. There were also some painkillers and fever medication. It wasn't a lot, just enough for 3 people. He'd go disinfect Biozzi later, as a sign of the train conductor's thoughtfulness. While the temperature in this season doesn't easily lead to inflammation or suppuration, it's still best to take precautions whenever possible. Finally, he spent another 100 units of wood to build a new accessory, a custom clothing production line. This was the only wood available on the train. His clothes were already starting to smell, and he'd never had a clean change of clothes. He built this production line and placed it in freight car number 2. It would create a custom-fitting garment tailored to each person's body shape, with over a dozen styles to choose from, all at a uniform price. Each set of clothing cost 10 units of wood. However, he was out of wood, so he had to leave it here for now. He'd just make do with it for the next few days. He'd wash his clothes the night before the rally, and they'd be mostly dry after a day of drying outside. It doesn't matter what happens at home, but when you're out and about, you still have to look respectable. In a post-apocalyptic world, having a respectable outfit is a testament to one's strength. After completing all this, Chen Mang, carrying his first aid kit, crossed freight car 2 and arrived at living car 3. Inside, Biozzi was competing with another young man in push-ups. Several other thugs were clamoring. Seeing Chen Mang approach, the noise suddenly quieted down, and Biozzi hurriedly got up from the ground. With a slightly embarrassed look on his face, he whispered, "Master Mang." "Yes." Chen Mang waved his hand, signaling everyone to relax. Then, carrying the first aid kit, he walked over to Biozzi and said, "Roll up your sleeves. I'll put some medicine on your wound to prevent it from getting inflamed." Biozzi's mouth twitched slightly, and he tilted his head to look at Chen Mang beside him, feeling a moment of embarrassment. He really wanted to say that his wound was already scabbed over, and why was he still applying chicken feather medicine? If he rolled up his sleeves at this moment, wouldn't he be exposed? But he had to obey Master Mang's orders. He gritted his teeth and slowly rolled up his sleeves to tear off the bandages. Chen Mang stared expressionlessly at the neat, scabbed wound on Biozzi's left arm. He glanced at the man in the train compartment who had initially disobeyed Biozzi, now getting along quite well with everyone. He instantly understood everything. He took out disinfectant spray from the first aid kit and sprayed it symbolically. After replacing the bandages, he patted Biozzi's shoulder and whispered, "Be careful on future field missions." "Alright, you guys keep playing." Then he returned to his train compartment. Such a neat wound couldn't have been inflicted by a creature like a zombie wolf. It looked more like a self-inflicted wound from a broken wheel. He didn't mind it much. There weren't many recreational activities in the wilderness. Back in the train compartment, Chen Mang had little else to do. He had memorized the information in the beginner's guide by heart. Sleepiness was creeping in, so he collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep. If we had to talk about entertainment, it might be the adrenaline rush of escaping a monster's mouth. In a daze, he suddenly remembered something. Maybe he hadn't offered incense to Master Kun yet? Master Kun was a kind man, giving him such a big newbie gift pack. He should thank him. Never mind. I'm tired today. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Chapter 43. Anyone who refuses to cooperate will be shot on the spot. In the wilderness, loneliness is inherent. Even though the train was packed, other trains were rarely seen on weekdays. The entire train was like a lone boat drifting on the vast ocean, no one knowing what would happen next, no one knowing whether they would see the sun again tomorrow. At daybreak, the slaves in slave cars 4 and 5 awoke. The train beneath them was hurtling across the wasteland. They knew no destination, only that if there was a mine, they would work, if not, they would stay in the cars. Finally, when the train slowly came to a stop, the slaves disembarked and found themselves back in the familiar mine from yesterday. The horde of corpses had receded. They had returned. The middle-aged man, who had been living relatively well before the apocalypse, gazed out at the familiar mine outside the car, put the cigarette he had been playing with back into his pocket, smiled, and patted the shoulder of the young man beside him. "Let's go. Grab your picks and get ready for work." The young man had been chatting with him quite well over the past few days, and the two had become quite familiar. Okay, the young man was happy to follow this uncle and listen to him talk about his glorious past before the apocalypse, an existence he had never encountered. Before the apocalypse, the capitalists called him a small-town youth. He didn't like the name very much. He tried to speak out online to gain recognition, but the name really changed, becoming a social waste. Small-town youth sounded better. But he always complained about it. Someone had to be the waste, so why couldn't that person be him? Daybreak, when the train stopped again at the mine from last night. A new day of mining began again. The thugs also began a new day of patrolling near the train. Inside the train. After finishing breakfast, Chen Mang sat at the control console and silently eavesdropped on the conversations of the train conductors on the train radio. This was his only entertainment, and there was no other entertainment at the moment. He was not very good at the quality of the women on the train. He was not so hungry that he would eat anything. However, that bloodthirsty bull train had sent him a private message late last night, saying they'd encountered dozens of man-eating spiders the previous night and harvested a good amount of spider silk after defeating them. They'd be able to trade him for more silk later. That was good. Chen Mang tilted his head to look at the patrolling thugs outside the train station and the slaves who had already descended into the cave. Everything was progressing steadily and orderly, heading for a better future. Across the wasteland, inside the king of electronic music, a dwarf man sat at the control console, idly browsing the train radio. He hadn't been to Taiping City since being driven out by that level 3 man-eating spider a few days ago. He'd just found a mine and been stationed there for the past few days, mining. And just now, he'd heard the train conductor announce on the train radio that he had a 6-foot-tall female slave, waiting for a suitable partner to trade her at a gathering. This had suddenly stirred a wave in his heart, which had originally been against him going to the gathering. 1.8 meters, the dwarf muttered. He was born that way, far shorter than a normal person. Before the apocalypse, his livelihood was as an NPC in a Lilliput-themed amusement park. There were many dwarfs like him there, offering visitors a chance to admire them. Perhaps it was because people with disabilities often have some psychological issues. He was obsessed with tall women. Before the apocalypse, he had never dared to consider such a feat. But after the apocalypse, he had luckily obtained a train order last month, and with some luck, he now controlled a fairly capable train. With power in his hands, many previously unthinkable desires began to blossom. He preferred women who were tall enough. It gave him a sense of conquest. No matter how tall they were, they still had to submit to him. The more a person lacks something, the more they pursue it. A long silence followed. He sent a private message to the person on the train radio, arranging a meeting at the gathering to discuss the deal. He currently had 2 women, the tallest of whom was only 1.76 meters tall, nothing compared to this 1.80 meter tall woman. With high heels, she was nearly 1.9 meters tall. A true giant. He liked her. Just then, the train conductor suddenly announced on the train radio that the level 3 man-eating spider in Taiping City had died, its body nearly completely devoured by the zombie horde, leaving only a hollow shell. There was no photo. Photos couldn't be sent in the chat room. The coordinates of the man-eating spider's body were also included. Huh? The dwarf man entered the coordinates into the console and realized they seemed to be along the same route he had escaped that day. and the location wasn't far from the level 1 iron mine. He remembered that when he was escaping, he encountered a train mining near the level 1 iron mine. He had wanted to warn the train to retreat back to the mines, hoping to escape, but because the train was at level 1 and lacked a radio, he couldn't contact it, so the attempt was abandoned. At that train's speed, it definitely couldn't outrun that level 3 man-eating spider. The train should already be being built in Hull by now. Perhaps some tycoon with level 3 vehicle parts happened to pass by and slew that level 3 man-eating spider boss? But why bother? Given that man-eating spider's size, a level 3 heavy machine gun wouldn't be enough. At least a level 3 cannon would be needed. Wasting so many rounds just to kill a boss? It's totally not worth it. You have more copper than you can use. While the boss's drops are sure to be good, they're definitely not worth the copper resources consumed. The man curled his lips and didn't think about it any further. He planned to stay here and continue mining for the next few days. He'd go to the gathering a few days later and take care of the spider silk he'd harvested, along with the spider leg blueprints. Someone in the chat room mentioned collecting spider silk last night. Let's get in touch later. He didn't know how much spider silk he could consume. After all, spider silk was primarily used to craft the green spider leg accessory, which, when fully upgraded, only consumed 600 units of level 1 fine silk. His spider leg had already reached maximum level. Inside the star train, Chen Mang had initially assumed that since last night's incident, today would be safe. Just like after a phone is stolen, there should be a safe period. It's unlikely to be stolen again during that time, right? How could such a terrible thing happen to someone so frequently? But, when it reached noon, Chen Mang saw dozens of slowly approaching red dots on his radar. He glanced out the window with binoculars and saw in the distance 20 or 30 ragged-looking survivors, supporting each other, approaching him. Upon spotting his train, parked in the wasteland, these survivors, as if they had found their target, quickened their pace with unspoken excitement on their faces. He frowned. The nearest city ruins were Taiping City. It had taken him about 5 hours to drive here from Taiping City, and that was at full speed. How did this survivor get here? On foot? Didn't they encounter a monster along the way? But he didn't have time to ponder these questions. He only knew that a group of slaves had arrived for delivery. He had to stop them first. He immediately picked up the intercom and said, "Biozi, stop these people, search them, remove weapons, anyone who refuses to cooperate will be shot on the spot." Chapter 44. What are you mumbling about? Yes, immediately upon receiving the order, Biozi and his thugs charged forward. After firing a warning shot, he roared at the survivors who were accelerating toward them. "Hands up! Anyone moving will die." His body tensed, his Tamron assault rifle cocked and aimed at the survivors, finger poised on the trigger, ready to fire. He preferred facing the zombie wolves to these unknown survivors. After all, his train had been destroyed once when a rival train sent thugs disguised as survivors to infiltrate the train and open fire, resulting in heavy casualties and the train conductor's sudden death. He didn't want to repeat that mistake. Biozi's eyes were fixed on the approaching survivors. If anyone reached for their arms, he would open fire without hesitation. The sudden appearance of such a group of survivors in the middle of nowhere was inherently strange. But the survivors seemed to understand Biozi's intentions. They all held their hands high as they approached, slowing their pace and slowly approaching, shouting tremblingly, "Don't shoot, don't shoot." When they were only a dozen meters apart, Biozi's thugs quickly advanced and pinned the 20 or so survivors to the ground. They searched each one closely, ensuring they were unarmed. Only then did they turn to Biozi and nod, signaling that everything was clear. Biozi breathed a sigh of relief, picking up the intercom and whispering, "Master Mang, everything is clear." Chen Mang disembarked from the star train, parked in the wasteland. Wearing his coat and leaning on his cane, he walked to the survivors lying prone on the ground, scanning each one before speaking. "Is anyone able to speak?" Me. As the words fell, a man among the survivors raised his hand tremblingly and stood up. "We were originally slaves on the Changsheng train. The train was attacked by a zombie horde last night, and the slaves in our car were left behind as sacrifices, but for some reason, the zombies didn't attack us, but continued to chase the train. It was late at night when the zombie horde left, so we didn't dare move. After daybreak, we thought about finding a train in the wasteland to continue working as slaves and mining. We're all in good health and very capable." Chen Mang looked calmly at the middle-aged man before him, then at the other survivors. There were about 20 of them, 17 men and 5 women. Most were around 30 years old, neither too old nor too young. He was naturally happy to have another group of miners. However, rather than the zombie horde not attacking the survivors, he preferred to believe that someone among them might possess a handheld zombie sensor blocker. He had relied on this special item to escape the zombie horde. It was simply hidden too deep, so it might not have been found. The object wasn't large, so it could easily be hidden inside a person's body. Chen Mang tilted his head to look at Biozi, waved his hand, and whispered, "Take off all your clothes. Search those women again. Search them thoroughly. There are many places where they can hide things." Biozi was stunned for a moment, then quickly understood and said in a deep voice, "Understood." What Chen Mang didn't see was that upon hearing this order, a flash of panic and anger flashed in the eyes of the man who had just stood up tremblingly. 10 minutes later, all the survivors were stripped naked and gathered in one area. Chen Mang squatted down and used his cane to dig at the walkie-talkie-like object on the ground. It was still stained with a sticky liquid. Next to it was a pistol, 3 magazines, and even a train decree. These things were all found on the middle-aged woman. Chen Mang remained silent for a moment, his expression calm, before waving his hand. Biozi quickly dragged a woman to him. "You're quite good at pretending." He raised his cane, gently tapped the middle-aged woman's cheek, and said calmly, "You're not telling the truth and you're planning to board the train armed. What do you want?" The woman, her shawl disheveled, knelt on the ground in a state of extreme embarrassment, her arms bound behind her back by the thugs. She offered no room for resistance, only screaming in terror. "It has nothing to do with me. It's him. He forced me to do this. He's the head thug on the Changshan. He forced us to conceal his identity so he could join a train and choose a date to take over. He forced me into it." Chen Mang followed the woman's gaze and saw the middle-aged man among the survivors he had just spoken to. The resentment and fear in his eyes were almost palpable, perhaps knowing his own doom was certain. This man was also resolute. He stepped out of the crowd and stood 2 meters away from Chen Mang. He stared at him, gritting his teeth and saying word by word, "I accept the bet. Now that the situation is clear, I have nothing to say. Give me a quick death. What I admire most in my life is people like you, meticulous and resourceful. What a shame, what a shame. If I had met you earlier, I would have become your most loyal subordinate, but if you are willing, the next moment." Bang, 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 the crisp sound of an assault rifle echoed across the wasteland. Chen Mang tossed a rifle into Biozi's hands before casually saying, "What are you mumbling about?" The gunshot rang out, and the man collapsed in a pool of blood. Soon, after questioning each one individually, the situation became clear. These people were indeed aboard the Changshan train. After the zombie tide, these slaves were abandoned as bait. The thug, working in the slave car at the time, was also thrown off. This thug had hidden a number of items on the previous train, including a handheld zombie sensor blocker and a train command, which he had kept hidden inside the body of his former lover. He had originally planned to find an opportunity to kill the former train conductor and take over, but unexpectedly, he was abandoned by the zombie horde. After being abandoned, the thug relied on the handheld blocker to survive with his slaves. His plan was simple, to join another train, infiltrate it again, and kill the conductor. Then, he would plunder the existing resources and slaves from this train, and use the train command to build his own. If he used the train command directly, he would run aground in the wasteland before reaching level 2 due to insufficient resources. Joining a train and plundering its resources was the best option. After all, the interior of most trains is vulnerable, especially without a built-in fire control system. As long as he could get close to the conductor, a small pistol would be enough to kill him instantly. With this group of slaves, he could potentially conceive a child. Chen Mang didn't comment on this plan. He only knew one thing: he had 21 more slaves. Oh, no, it was 20. The man also had his old lover sent away by Biozi. Chapter 45: Departure to the Rally. Inside the train, Chen Mang had already thrown the pistol and magazine into the Earth's core furnace. As for the handheld zombie sensor blocker and train order, he cleaned them and put them away, just in time for the trade at the rally in a few days. However, he had one question he was undecided about and needed to discuss with Old Pig. "Old Pig," Chen Mang said thoughtfully as he sat at the control console. "I plan to attend the rally in 6 days and exchange some materials there. What do you think? Should we keep these slaves for our own use or sell them directly when the time comes?" "Master Mang," Old Pig said tentatively. Are you worried that the atmosphere on the train has been quite good so far, and the slaves have been working very hard? With the addition of a group of outsiders, the previously peaceful slaves might have some undesirable thoughts. Yes, Chen Mang nodded slightly. He did have some concerns about this matter. Actually, you don't have to worry too much about this, Mr. Mang. Lao Tzu took a deep breath and began to explain. First of all, the treatment of slaves on our train is one of the best in the entire wasteland. If the end of the world has just arrived, many people may have strange ideas, but our batch of slaves may have been passed on to several train conductors. They are very familiar with the treatment of slaves on other trains. Not to mention the distant past, Mr. Kun just had this happen a few days ago, and we will definitely change the name of slaves slowly in the future. Change it to a name that is cohesive enough for the train and can mobilize production enthusiasm, such as passengers, but before that, I think we can divide slaves into 3 levels, for example, first-level slaves, second-level slaves, and third-level slaves. The higher the level of slaves, the better treatment they can enjoy. The promotion mechanism will be based on the total amount of iron ore handed over. When the train develops in the future, it can be changed to first-level passengers, second-level passengers, third-level passengers, etc. As for these newcomers, let them be third-level slaves, and our veterans be second-level slaves. That way, once the second-level slaves receive the appropriate treatment, it'll be harder to incite them. After all, the price of rebellion is different, and we'll definitely accept more slaves in the future. We can't exclude them just because they're of a lesser origin. Humans are an extremely scarce productive resource in the wilderness, and how many people can survive there with a legitimate origin? With this system, it will be much easier for us to recruit slaves and gradually integrate them into the Star Train. Besides that, I can also set up some reward mechanisms. Meeting certain contributions can earn you various things, like women, delicious food, a day off, and so on. Chen Mang listened patiently and suddenly laughed. He finally understood why even a tyrant like Xiao needed his advisor Guo Ji's 10 wins and 10 losses theory. He'd had this thought in mind, but it hadn't felt right. After hearing Old Pig's words, he suddenly felt more confident. Often, people still need to draw confidence from the outside world. Very good, let's do it this way. You can come up with a promotion mechanism and corresponding contribution points yourself. You'll take over these slaves and give them some basic training. Understood? Old Pig said sternly. I'll do it right away. 6 days passed in the blink of an eye. It was already late at night, and the slaves were returning from the mines, carrying their pickaxes. They would depart early tomorrow morning for the rally at coordinates 239, 1923, over 600 kilometers away. The journey would take several hours, so he had to set off early. The past few days had been relatively peaceful, with no major incidents except for 2 more drives away by the zombie horde. A total of 8,100 units of iron ore had been obtained. With the addition of these new slaves, mining speed had increased significantly. Chen Mang had already spent most of the iron ore. Besides the locomotive, the Star Train currently had 4 carriages, cargo car 2, accommodation car 3, and slave cars 4 and 5. Chen Mang, on the other hand, had expended a massive sum, spending a full 4,000 units of iron ore to build steel armor for all 4 carriages. Standing in the wasteland, Chen Mang leaned on his cane, gazing at the thick, dark armor covering the dragon-like train before him, his eyes filled with satisfaction. The armor gave the train a sinister, heavy appearance. It looked powerful. Unlike before, when it looked like a newbie. Of course, they were all level 1, and he didn't have the iron ore to upgrade the steel armor to level 2, which would cost 5,000 units of iron ore. Furthermore, he had also built 3 heavy machine guns, 1 on each carriage's roof, along with the one he had confiscated. The result was a powerful and intimidating firepower, costing him a total of 1,500 units of iron ore. However, he only had a few hundred rounds of ammunition, so he didn't use them most of the time, primarily for deterrence. He also spent 1,000 units of iron ore to build an internal fire control system. A level 1 internal fire control system, with a heavy machine gun embedded in the ceiling at the rear of each carriage. While still a heavy machine gun, this one offers far greater value than an external one, though it can only fire internally. Yes, he's currently out of ammunition, so his primary purpose is deterrence. Until he finds copper ore, these heavy weapons will essentially be used only for external deterrence. He's already crafted nearly all the components available for a level 2 train, and will continue to gradually upgrade them, bringing it to a fully equipped level 2 train. The train currently has 1,600 units of iron ore. He spent another 1,000 units of iron ore to upgrade the enemy radar to level 2, increasing its detection range to 2,000-meter radius. He saved the remaining 600 units of iron ore for daily food and water production. Lest they use up all the iron ore, find no new ore for a while, and miss another train, everyone on the train starved to death in the wasteland. After sorting through the past few days' harvest, Chen Mang looked towards the gradually collapsing mine not far away, feeling a sense of reluctance. With all the slaves gone, the mine also met its end. All the resources had been mined, and the mine had merged back into the wilderness. Perhaps in time, the mine would reappear. But then, they would need to find a new mine. Chen Mang took a deep breath, stuck his dying cigarette in the dirt, stood in the wasteland, clasped his hands, closed his eyes, and murmured, "God bless, everything goes well tomorrow, as long as I can successfully exchange enough spider silk at the gathering. I can go to the Doomsday Abyss to mine for level 2 iron ore and level 1 copper ore." Chapter 46. What is the price of a slave? They camped there for the night. As daylight faded, the star train roared across the wasteland, hurtling towards coordinates 239, 1923. Before the apocalypse, this wasteland was originally known as the Teeling Wasteland. Perhaps because it was too awkward to pronounce, many people preferred to call it the uninhabited wasteland afterward. Over 4 hours later, the star train's speed gradually slowed. Initially, there were no trains in sight, but in the second half of the journey, a few were visible here and there. Now, a train was only visible now and then, and the destination was only a stone's throw away. Finally, when the train stopped, Chen Mang, sitting at the controls, looked at the crowd gathered in the wasteland not far away, a strange look flashing in his eyes. The gathering had arrived. He hadn't expected it to be so rudimentary, without even a tent. The train conductor and his thugs would walk to the gathering to trade. For safety reasons, all trains were required to stop 1,000 meters from the gathering. This rally had no organizers, it was organized entirely by consensus. Following local custom, he parked his train a kilometer away from the gathering. He led by Ozzy, Lao Zhu, and 3 other thugs out of the train compartment, while the remaining thugs remained inside to maintain order and guard against unexpected situations. Standing on the wasteland, Chen Mang, leaning on his cane, glanced back at his train. With it, he could remotely control it. He had experimented with it and found it could be controlled from a distance of roughly a kilometer. In the event of an emergency, with a single thought, his star train could zip to him and whisk him away. He had never seen so many trains, 40 or 50 of them were parked here. He had no idea how strong his own train was before, but now, after observing so many, he realized his star train was quite capable. At least 20 of them weren't fully armored. Was that so difficult? With just 100 slaves, a level 1 iron mine, and 2 weeks of steady growth, one could essentially reach his level. Why did so many trains seem even uglier than his? His main targets for today's trade were 2 people. One was the bloodthirsty bull train. The other was the king of electronic music train. Both of them possessed considerable silk, and he had already arranged to meet them at the end of the rally. He was now preparing to take Old Pig and the others on a self-guided tour. Old Pig, Chen Mang narrowed his eyes slightly, surveying the noisy crowd nearby. "You used to be a deputy train conductor. How much do you know about the rally?" "Not at all," Old Pig shook his head decisively. "To attend a rally, you basically have to be a level 2 train, unless you've obtained the coordinates through other means. My train's never attended the rally, and I've never even come to see it. Let's go." Chen Mang asked no more questions. He simply walked ahead, leaning on his cane, and whispered, "Let's take a look." Ozzy and the remaining 3 thugs followed behind, wielding Tamron assault rifles, their faces icy. At a glance, all train conductors were followed by a number of thugs, ranging from 2 or 3 to more than a dozen. The main source of combat on a train wasn't the thugs, but the train itself. The thugs' main duties involved exploring ruins, searching for supplies, patrolling, maintaining order, conducting small-scale battles, and ensuring the conductor's safety while traveling. It sounded much more complicated than being a slave. Slaves only needed to be able to swing a pickaxe. Each train captain maintained a certain distance from the others, avoiding excessive eye contact to avoid misunderstandings. They all entered the gathering in unison, either strolling around or finding an empty seat, riding their tradable items on a nearby wooden board. There were only 40 or 50 train captains in total. It was a small gathering, with limited options. The flow of traffic was simple, a single line running north to south. Many train captains sat on either side of this line, waiting for other train captains to come and trade. Chen Mang, accompanied by Lao Zu and a few others, strode into the gathering. The first stall they saw had 2 words written on a wooden board, looking for various vehicle parts, blueprints of green grade and above, high price accepted. Selling slaves. What's the price for slaves? Chen Mang glanced at the white-haired old man sitting behind the stall, squatting down and asking. This was the first time he had seen such an old train captain, who looked to be in his 70s or older. The dozing old man looked Chen Mang up and down. 500 units of iron ore for a young adult, 300 units for an elderly or disabled person. The price for a woman varies, ranging from 300 to 1,000 units. Chen Mang narrowed his eyes as he calculated. After the apocalypse, the monetary system had collapsed. Currently, iron ore, a mainstream resource, had become the new currency. Everyone needed it, and there wasn't enough. A normal young adult could mine about 10 units of ore per day, which meant a payback period of around 50 days. This was assuming they could consistently find ore within those 50 days. He felt the price was a bit inflated. The logic behind this differed from the pre-apocalypse era. Before the apocalypse, businesses that could break even within 50 days were generally covered by criminal law, while those not covered by the criminal law were considered prime opportunities. In the apocalypse, however, the uncertainty within 50 days was simply too great. Leaving so much iron ore sitting here without improving the train's strength seemed irrational. So, he wondered if anyone would actually trade iron ore for slaves. If you're interested, I can take you to my train. The quality is pretty good. The white-haired old man's gaze lingered on the Tamron assault rifles in the arms of Biozi and the others. After a light cough to clear his throat, he began his sales pitch with a serious expression. Brother, your train is definitely quite capable. If you're buying in bulk, we can negotiate the price. Someone bought a lot of slaves from me last time. They've probably already left the uninhabited wasteland for more resource-rich areas. With so many slaves, if they find a good mine, they'll recoup their investment in just a few days, and every day after that, they'll be making pure profit. That guy's a big shot. He bought 100 slaves from me in one go. They're all top-notch young men. Chen Mang said nothing, simply pulling a cigarette from his pocket, lighting it, and sighing softly. He was genuinely curious about who would spend 50,000 units of iron ore on 100 slaves. With that much iron ore, they could do anything else. They could almost have a half-full level 2 train, right? What was the point of buying so many slaves? From a long-term perspective, it's a guaranteed win. If you come across a level 2 iron ore, the payback period will be significantly shortened. However, in the apocalypse, long-term investments are rarely viable. No one knows what will happen tomorrow. Considering long-term investments requires prioritizing short-term stability. If this person isn't stupid, then they truly possess talent. Chapter 47, Exercise Car. 50,000 units of iron ore mean? He hadn't even spent that much iron ore since he built the train. Chen Mang waved his hand and stood up to leave the stall. The price was too high. He wouldn't consider buying slaves for now. He would consider it later when the train was strong enough. Moreover, often, a train's lack of resources wasn't due to a shortage of slaves, but rather the difficulty of finding a mine in the wasteland. Even if one was found, the constant waves of zombies would reveal the true meaning of God's care. As he walked further, he found the market full of all sorts of things. For example, various daily necessities, liquor, vacuum-packed snacks, and more. There were also resources for sale, such as copper ore, iron ore, and accessory blueprints. And Chen Mang looked at a woman kneeling on the ground in front of a stall, her ankles bound by chains. She was very neatly dressed, even wearing full makeup and exquisite clothing. She was clearly well-groomed, standing out from the slovenly crowds of the apocalypse. 2 lines of words were written on a wooden board nearby, popular A-list actress, seeking her soulmate. Behind him, there were several attractive women, as well as 3 young men, also meticulously dressed. They all looked young and handsome, like celebrities. Chen Mang's expression was calm as he considered them. To be fair, these women were all quite good-looking. Being fully made up in the apocalypse was already a significant draw, not to mention their already impressive appearances. With their fame, they were indeed a rare commodity. Master Mang, Old Pig whispered in Chen Mang's ear with a strange expression, isn't this woman Ji Chuchu, the one who was incredibly popular on the variety show Before the Apocalypse? Did this guy bring in a crew from Before the Apocalypse? The other people were all featured guests on that variety show. They're all very popular, but it'll probably be hard to get a high price. No one's willing to spend so much money on a single woman, unless he sells her in batches. Perhaps someone would be interested in trying her. What's the price? Chen Mang turned his gaze from the woman and asked the vendor. Upon hearing the voice, the popular actress who was kneeling on the ground suddenly looked at Chen Mang with pitiful and expectant eyes, and forced out a pitiful and bitter smile, which could easily arouse a man's desire to protect him. The train conductor sitting in front of the stall had his eyes suddenly lit up when he saw the Tamron assault rifle in Biozi's arms. Any blue-grade accessory blueprint can be taken away directly. If you don't have it, 50,000 units of iron ore or copper ore will do. If that doesn't work, tell me if you have any rare green-grade accessory blueprints, or some special props or something. You can also bring them out and let us discuss it. This is Ji Chuchu, a first-class dancer, definitely worth the price. Chen Mang didn't react, but just looked at the young men behind him. What's the price of these men? These prices are a little lower, the vendor at this stall said seriously. I have been urging them to exercise these days, and their physiques have always been very good. If you like this, brother, then they are perfect for you. And the vendor pulled out the young man behind him, took off all his clothes, revealing his standard abdominal muscles, patted his face hard and said seriously, look at these abdominal muscles. It took me a lot of effort to maintain such abdominal muscles in the Doomsday. The price is a bit high. Let me take a look. Chen Mang looked them up and down before sighing and turning away from the stall. Are these people crazy, or is he the only one in dire straits? A female star, and you dare to ask for 50,000 iron ore? Why don't you ask for 100,000? After seeing Chen Mang and the others leave, the vendor's smile vanished. He turned around with a sullen expression and slapped Ji Chuchu across the face. Didn't I tell you, when customers come, you should act as pitiful as possible? What do you mean by that dry smile? Are you acting like a travesty? Have your acting never improved in your entire life? Ji Chuchu knelt on the ground, tears welling in her eyes as she whispered, Old Liu, Old Liu? Call me Master Liu. Do you think I'm still your agent? Still someone you can order around at will? The vendor slapped her even more angrily, then sat back on the ground, his chest heaving, his eyes flickering. Ji Chuchu was definitely a good product, a popular A-list actress, and would definitely fetch a good price, but everyone in the no man's wasteland was so powerful that no one could afford to pay. He'd come to every gathering, but he hadn't sold her yet. How about heading to Kunlun Mountain to have a look? Kunlun Mountain lies at the westernmost edge of the uninhabited wasteland. Resources are more plentiful there, but the dangers are also greater. A level 3 man-eating spider boss monster, which can be a boss in the uninhabited wasteland, would be nothing more than a minor leader among the monsters there. A train that could thrive there would have to be much stronger, and could certainly afford the price. However, with his train's strength, it would be nearly impossible to return once it went. Furthermore, the disparity in power was so great, who would buy it? They'd just rob it, and he wouldn't even have the energy to cause both sides to suffer losses. Afterward, Chen Mang inquired about the prices of goods sold at several stalls. For example, tobacco, a pack costs 200 units of iron ore. Another example, fitness equipment. Sir, let's think long-term. How can we get the slaves to mine more resources per day? Is a strong physique essential? Purchase these barbells and treadmills, build a dedicated exercise car, and have the slaves exercise in the car for a few hours every day after mining. Would that significantly increase the slaves' mining efficiency in the long run? These packages only contain 1,000 units of iron ore. My men painstakingly brought them from the ruins of the city. They're practically mint. If you're interested, the price is negotiable. Chen Mang remained silent, staring at the vendor, who was talking non-stop and trying to sell, as if he were an idiot. He glanced at a paper guide to winning sales at the vendor's feed, and after a moment's silence, he slowly walked away. Are all his men idiots? How on earth did his men carry a treadmill so large and heavy from the ruins of the city onto the train? Was it just brute force? He could see it. Everything is for sale at this fair. Many train conductors, when running out of ore, would scavenge the city ruins for supplies and trade them for iron ore at the fair. However, the finds weren't always necessarily useful. Hard currency like tobacco could be easily cashed in, but things like barbells required salesmanship. Or perhaps even the luckiest of luck. In a post-apocalyptic world, even the god of sales wouldn't be able to sell a comb to a monk. Unless he was a fool. Chapter 48. Brother, do you have any misunderstanding about me? Huh? After seeing another customer leave with a sneer, the vendor finally couldn't help it. He slapped the subordinate behind him on the head and shouted angrily, I asked you to collect supplies. What the hell were you thinking when you brought this stuff back? Look, can you sell it now? The muscular strong man behind me whispered a little aggrievedly, Mr. Fang, I didn't find any good supplies at the time. I thought thieves can't leave empty-handed. I have to bring something back. I happened to come across a gem that hadn't been looted. My brother and I carried it all back. The vendor put his hands on his hips and laughed angrily. You mean you two brothers are strong? That's true. The strong man nodded proudly. We have been strong since we were young. Chen Mang passed by the stall and continued to walk deeper into the gathering. Along the way, he saw a lot of messy things on sale, and even paper novels were sold, with only 1 unit of iron ore for 1 book. He inquired about prices at every stall, primarily to get a rough idea of the market. He wasn't particularly eager to buy. After all, he didn't have much money, and his primary currency was iron ore, of which he only had 600 units on the train. But he still bought some. For example, the old hen Laozi was holding. Hens can lay eggs even without a rooster, but the eggs are infertile and incapable of producing chicks. Before the apocalypse, almost all eggs sold in supermarkets were infertile, and the hens who laid them likely had never seen a rooster. This hen cost him 400 units of iron ore, a reasonable price. Besides having an egg almost daily, if you were lucky enough to find a rooster in the future, he could hatch more chicks. He could then dedicate a carriage specifically to hatching chicks, which would be part of the ecosystem's internal circulation. Finally, Chen Mang reached the end of the gathering and encountered a feral-looking man sitting on the ground. In front of him was a wooden board with the words Bloodthirsty Bull written on it. This was the man he had initially agreed to trade with at the gathering. He was extremely hairy, the kind of man who, if you were drinking at the night market at night, most people would have to avoid him. He slowly walked over, squatted down, and whispered, Brother, I'm the star. How much spider silk did you bring? You? The feral man's eyes suddenly lit up, and with a grin, he pulled a large pile of spider silk from the box behind him and placed it in front of him. Here it all is. A total of 4,500 units of grade 1 fine spider silk. It's a little short of the amount you requested, but you can ask others later and it should be more than enough. Brother, make an offer. This is it. The man's smile faded, and his face was serious and earnest. While spider silk has few uses, the only components I know of for it are spider legs and spider venom. However, it's a rare material after all. It can't be mined in the mines. It can only drop from killing man-eating spiders. Brother, I'll give you a sincere price, 5,000 units of iron ore. It's a 1-to-1 exchange. This price is definitely not high. After all, it is a rare material. Chen Mang waved his hand. Lao Zu pulled a handheld zombie sensor blocker from his pocket and placed it in front of the man. He then spoke again. Look at this thing. I can trade it, but you know its value. You'll need to pay for it. He wasn't just wandering around. He was mainly looking at the market. Through inquiring about prices, he learned that special items are generally quite expensive. Special items possess unique effects and can be decisive in certain situations. Examples include the handheld zombie sensor blocker, the Hell Cane, and the train command. If you were to sell his Hell Cane, it wouldn't be a problem for Ji Chuchu, a popular actress. However, it's hard to find someone who can afford it, and he's reluctant to sell it. Being able to control a train from 1,000 meters away offers more than just convenience. It means the train can become a fifth limb, freely controlled and capable of a variety of unexpected attacks. The wild man took the special item, which resembled a walkie-talkie, and after examining the display, he was slightly stunned. This thing is truly a good thing. This item blocks the perception of nearby level 1 zombies. Whether searching for supplies or other situations, or even when surrounded by zombie swarms, it's invaluable. With a bit of luck, it can even save his life. More importantly for him, this item could be even more valuable in his hands. There's a rare green-grade vehicle accessory, the vehicle-mounted zombie sensor blocker, which requires this handheld version. He just happened to know a train conductor who has the blueprint for it. After purchasing the blueprint, crafting the accessory, and upgrading it, he'd be able to completely ignore the zombie swarms in the wasteland. His safety would be greatly improved. He wouldn't have to worry about zombie swarms harassing him while mining, a priceless treasure. While spider silk is a rare material and much harder to obtain than iron ore, it's also of little use to him. He's been holding onto it for a while now, and after trading 4,500 units of spider silk for a handheld zombie sensor blocker, he definitely needs more. Chen Mang narrowed his eyes slightly, watching the man's reaction. Seeing his reaction, he felt a sense of relief and coughed softly. Forget it, I won't trade this thing. Buy Ozzy, go to the train and ask a few people to bring down 5,000 units of iron ore. No, the man, still lost in his sweet dream, immediately pressed down by Ozzy's right hand as he was about to remove the blocker. He forced a smile and said awkwardly, don't worry, let's talk more. I like this item too, but it can only block level 1 zombies. It's really limited, but he quickly changed the subject and added, well, I'll give you some more. The feral man took a deep breath and pulled out a tall female slave from behind him. I'll give you this woman 4,500 units of spider silk and this woman in exchange for this special item. Chen Mang stared expressionlessly at the woman behind him. She was quite tall, a full 1.87 meters, taller than him. Because of his height, his frame has lost some of his beauty, although his face is not bad. But, brother, do you have any misunderstandings about me? I'd better trade the iron ore for your spider silk. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Arriving at the Abyss of Doom. Listen to me, the bloodthirsty bull train conductor looked at Chen Mang seriously. I'm not kidding you, brother. She must be very valuable, otherwise I wouldn't have brought her to the rally. I know the conductor of the King of Electronic Music train will be coming to the rally soon. That guy is a dwarf. He can't resist tall women. This woman can fetch a high price from him. I saw on the train radio that he has spider silk for sale. You can definitely get all the spider silk he has in exchange for this woman. If you want to trade for iron ore, he might not be willing to pay too high a price, but if it's spider silk, he'll definitely be happy to see it. Chen Mang couldn't help but laugh. Didn't you just say spider silk was a rare material? How come spider silk is not as valuable as iron ore now? The man coughed awkwardly. Spider silk is a rare material, yes, but it's not used in many places. It doesn't have the same versatility as iron ore, you should know that. Deal. Chen Mang said nothing more, just smiled and completed the transaction. He actually knew the King of Electronic Music's train conductor had this habit. That day, a train conductor had announced on the train radio that he had a 5 feet 78 inches female slave waiting for a suitable match. He had noticed the King of Electronic Music's train conductor appear, and that would secure the King of Electronic Music's spider silk. After all, his slave was taller, a full 5 feet 87 inches. He had originally planned to trade it for a train order. But the King of Electronic Music's train conductor hadn't arrived yet. Chen Mang, following the other train conductor's lead, found an empty spot to sit down and found a wooden board with the words "Star." Train order for sale, spider silk wanted. The words "Star" were written primarily for the King of Electronic Music's train conductor to identify them. He was quite satisfied with the deal with the bloodthirsty bull train. He had initially expected to trade a handheld zombie sensor blocker for spider silk. The result was better than he had imagined. And there was a woman in it. He had already received 4,500 units of spider silk, and he needed a total of 8,100 units. He only needed 3,600 units to upgrade his spider leg accessories to level 13. Not long after, he saw a dwarf man, followed by 7 or 8 thugs, striding towards him. Before Chen Mang could say anything, he saw the man's eyes fixed on the tall woman behind him, and he spoke word by word. "Brother, name your price." "I want this woman." Chen Mang sighed softly. He thought the dwarf man had recognized him. It seemed that he had spotted the woman behind him in the crowd and was running straight towards him. He pointed his cane at the 3-word "Star" on the wooden board. The dwarf man followed the cane's gaze and immediately realized what was going on. His face suddenly filled with a smile. So it's you? It seems you've already done some research on me. Then be frank, I have 1,800 units of spider silk in exchange for this woman of yours. That's too low. Chen Mang shook his head and said seriously, do you know how much I paid for this woman? A woman 1.87 meters tall. Do you know how rare she is? The dwarf frowned slightly, thinking for a moment. How much spider silk do you need in total? 3,600 units of spider silk. If I give you 3,600 units of spider silk, can I have this woman? Yes, wait a minute. Several trains followed me to Taiping City to hunt man-eating spiders. I'm going to contact them now. Wait a few hours, I'll be right back. With that, the dwarf turned and strode out of the rally again without stopping. 5 hours later, the dwarf returned and placed 3,800 units of spider silk in front of Chen Mang's stall. He then took a deep breath, looking somewhat uncontrollably at the tall woman behind him, licking his lips. Is it ready now? Congratulations. Chen Mang smiled and shook the man's hand, signaling the deal was done. By then, the gathering had mostly dispersed. Darkness would arrive in a few hours, and half the trains had already departed. He hadn't sold any train orders yet. Few inquired, and the highest offer was only for 2,000 units of iron ore. Most train operators bought these as insurance. If their train crashed, they had a train order, offering a chance to recover. But it was just insurance, so they didn't want to pay too much. He wasn't in a hurry to sell 2,000 units of iron ore. Wouldn't solve a big problem for him. It was only enough to produce less than 2 days' worth of slaves. Better to keep it. Huh? Chen Mang stood at the edge of the star train, gazing at the trains roaring off into the distance. The gathering was over, a perfect conclusion for him. He'd already collected more than his quota of spider silk, with 200 more units to his name. Now, it was time to upgrade his spider legs and explore the abyss of doom in the wasteland. Remarkably, the entire gathering was free of conflict. Not to mention fighting, even arguments were rare. Everyone was extremely restrained, with no one maintaining order. The consensus was simply upheld. Every train conductor had a need for trade. If anyone violated this unspoken rule, it would mean that no conductor would be able to trade with any other conductor for a long time. Anyone who dared to break this unspoken rule would become a public enemy. When the disparity in strength was minimal, this consensus served as a useful constraint. He also witnessed the diversity and variety of the trains. At nightfall, across the wasteland, beneath a sky filled with stars, a long line of star trains sped off into the distance like an arrow from a bow. After entering the coordinates of the abyss into the control console and traveling through the night for about 4 hours, he finally reached the abyss just as night fell. There was a level 2 iron ore mine there. 1 unit of level 2 iron ore was equivalent to 10 units of level 1 iron ore. This meant that with the current number of slaves on the star train, mining could yield approximately 10,000 units of iron ore a day, enough to replace a G-Chuchu every 5 days. By then, he could upgrade all the train's armor to level 3 and all its components to level 5, unlocking a supermodel effect for each, making his train a fully equipped level 2 train. When he returned from the abyss, the hordes of zombies that once chased him everywhere would be slaughtered like grass. Numbers were meaningless. When the power disparity reached a certain distance, numbers lost their meaning. Finally, half an hour later, the star train had successfully arrived at the edge of the abyss. Chen Mang stepped out of the car, leaning on his cane as he gazed towards the abyss before him, thousands of meters long and nearly 40 meters wide. He gazed towards the horizon. There was no one around. Under the starry sky, he felt a sense of extreme, desolate beauty. In peacetime, this place might have attracted many campers. And beneath the bottomless abyss, a level 2 iron mine and a level 1 copper mine lay, like young maidens waiting to be deflowered, shyly awaiting his favor. Chapter 50 Spider Leg Level 10 Supermodel Effect. A cigarette burned out. The crimson glow faded across the deserted wasteland, like a meteor flashing across the sky, or like a young man's restrained love, fleeting and unnoticed. Chen Mang entered the train compartment, sat at the control console, and pressed a red button. With a clacking of gears, mechanical prosthetic limbs, like spider legs, emerged from the bottom of the carriage, replacing the hot wheels. The entire star train instantly transformed into a giant, worm-like centipede. Whoa, he exhaled softly, a hint of tenacity in his eyes. The deserted wasteland was almost flat, without any bumps or obstacles, and he had no place to experiment. Although the accessory claimed to allow free travel on a 90-degree cross-section, he had never experienced it in person. He slowly stepped on the accelerator. The train began to creep towards the cliff edge. The train's assistance AI in the control console scrolled several streams of information on the screen. The slope ahead is 90 degrees downward, and normal travel is possible. As the first mechanical limb at the front of the train touched the cliff face, Chen Mang felt a creaking sound from within the train. Then, like a centipede on the cliff face, the entire train moved with remarkable ease and stability. There were no headlights. In the night, the abyss below was pitch black, as utterly terrifying as the gates of hell, leaving one's mind utterly unsettled. The intense feeling of weightlessness made Chen Mang's chest tighten. The seatbelt held him securely in his seat, but the others in the car were not so lucky. He had been warned in advance that the train had no seatbelts or other means of restraint. They could only maintain their posture as best they could, crammed together on one side. While their lives weren't in danger, it certainly wasn't comfortable. To prevent his slaves from suffocating, he opened the doors at the rear of each car as the train spiraled down the cliff face, ensuring as much airflow as possible. 10 minutes later, there was no light at all. The train was enveloped in an abyss of pitch blackness. Only the dim lights within the train compartments illuminated the train, like protesters in the torrent of history, burning their limited lives to resist the encroaching darkness. Visibility was practically zero. Chen Mang could see nothing ahead, relying solely on the train's AI to remind him it was safe and to continue on. They had already descended 2,000 meters. He tried to maintain a relatively steady speed. A rapid descent could cause discomfort to the slave's body. Finally, 30 minutes later, after the AI signaled it was nearing bottom, with another creak, the train came to a safe, steady stop at the base of the cliff. Chen Mang leaped from the train compartment and stood in the pitch-black abyss. He looked up at the starry sky, a sliver of light above him, and felt a wave of trance. This was his first time in such an environment. It was like gazing at the stars while mired in mud, filled with a unique sense of loneliness and romance. The resource detection radar was also beeping. He was alerted to an unmined, level 2 iron mine just 800 meters away. He had been monitoring the search radar the entire time. From the beginning until now, not a single red blip had appeared on it. This place was a natural barrier, preventing any monsters from reaching it. Perhaps a flying monster could reach it, but he hadn't seen any yet. Meanwhile, Old Pig had finished his inventory and trotted over. Master Mang, there are no slave casualties. They're just scratches, not affecting the work. Yes, Chen Mang nodded and said softly, everyone rest here for the night and resume work at dawn. Understood. After Old Pig left, Chen Mang looked at the spider-like mechanical prosthetics under the train. He had spent a total of 8,100 units of spider silk, upgrading the spider leg accessory from level 4 to level 13. At level 5, he unlocked his first supermodel effect. The spider leg level 5 supermodel effect switches to spider crawl mode, reducing movement noise by 100%. At level 10, he unlocked his second supermodel effect. Level 10 spider leg super effect. The spider leg can eject 2 strands of spider silk up to 100 meters forward, lasting for 1 hour. This allows the train to travel smoothly on the silk. Each 100 meters of silk ejected consumes 100 units of level 1 silk. He stood calmly at the bottom of the abyss, leaning on his cane, gazing at the 2 super effects. The first super effect is somewhat ordinary. The noise of a moving train isn't just the wheels, it also includes the roar of the engine and the clatter of the car hinges. Unless other accessories can be developed to reduce these noises, too. Add to that radar ignoring and even spatial distortion. Then, the entire train will be able to move silently and ghost-like in the darkness. The second super effect offers a wide range of applications. For example, if he wants to reach the other side of the Doomsday Abyss, with this effect, there's no need for a detour. He simply needs to eject the silk on the other side of the cliff, and the train will be able to travel freely on the silk, straddling the cliff like a tightrope. Or in the city, with this effect combined with his spider's leg zone, he could control the train to roam freely across the skyline. It was useful for both escaping and searching for supplies. Very good, Chen Mang chuckled before returning to the train interior, ready to start work early the next morning. A few hours later, daybreak arrived. The train had stopped next to the level 2 iron mine. This level 2 mine was open air, not underground. This eliminated the need for tunnels to reach the depths, significantly improving mining efficiency. Looking up, one could see a thin ray of sunlight. However, the sunlight barely reached the depths of the abyss, which remained dark. Only by looking up could one see the faint sunlight, accompanied by a cool breeze. Each slave received a bowl of hot water, several slices of steamed buns, and a bag of pickled mustard tuber for every 10 people. Of course, the slaves mentioned here were the level 2 slaves from the original train. The newly arrived level 3 slaves received slices of bread. Today, everyone's meal plan has been upgraded. Normally, steamed buns are only eaten by thugs and train conductors. To dispel the cold. Last night, Chen Mang had already consumed 100 units of iron ore to upgrade the pickaxe production line to level 2. Now, this production line can produce pickaxes capable of mining level 2 resources. However, making a level 2 pickaxe requires 10 units of iron ore. He only has 70 units of iron ore, which can only produce 7 level 2 pickaxes. But this is not a big deal. After all, there is a level 2 iron mine nearby. A little digging will yield enough iron ore to make a level 2 pickaxe. The doors of the star train are parked to the side, dimly lit, providing a weak light source. This is the best resource these slaves have enjoyed in recent days. It is also the best resource the train can currently provide the slaves. Everything is for this level 2 iron mine. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.